Okay, welcome to the almost the 14th of February. And I have and those and else to question? Yes, sir. There is a supplementary agenda advice, which is short and sweet, and we didn't have anything on the weekend because it was like the summer. First matters are not aware of any. Declaration of interests. Chair, two letters item 7, which is referring to the innovation I was involved in that quite in depth when I was portfolio holding properties and some of the writing is relevant. I was involved with that site and all the three works was done when I was keep releasing. Thank you,
Chairman, on item 6, I'll be declaring an interest, as myself and my board councillors have had a political position on this during the election, and I'll be leaving the room as sitting on the board members. Thank you.
Item 12,
Did you realise time on the minutes of the previous meeting? Okay, let's move on to item 5, which is 48 Green Street, Gillingham. And this is, we had our excellent presentation about the assessment, biology assessment on Monday. It's a useful example. Is this the big responsibility?
Good evening, members. So, this is the Green Street, which is the former Rise Civic, as Chairman referred to. This was the third and last committee, and that was for to allow members to undertake liability training, which took place on Monday. So, the site itself, Street, is located in Gillingham Stones Grove from Gillingham High Street. So Gillingham High Street itself is to the north. You've got railway to the east and south, Pembroke, Gardens, and Health Centre to the south. And as I say, the site itself fronts onto Green Street. Just referring to some of the site photos, so photos from a few different points. Got one from the High Street looking back up towards Green Street to the Civic, the building on the left there. Close-up version from Green Street itself, and then some vantage points from the rear. As you can see, externally, the fabric of the building is holding firm, but internally, it's a very different picture. So, as you can see, it's in a very poor condition internally. The building itself has been empty in excess of 7 years. And although the fabric of the building from the outside is reasonably sound, obviously it's in place internally. Just in terms of the aerial images, it provides a little more context in terms of the site itself. So you've got the building here, you've got the proximity to the train station, Pembroke Gardens and the park here, and being on High Street running through. So moving on to the application itself, it's the conversion extension of the former Civic to grade 57 flats. It will be predominantly 1 and 2 beds, so it will be 25 1-bed flats, 32 bed flats with 1 studio and 1 3-bed flat. So in terms of the existing elevations, you can see how the building itself steps down. The idea being the building will be extending upwards, essentially square off the building at the front, then an inset extension on top. Again, it's just the existing elevations. So if moving on to the proposed elevations, then you can see, obviously, the building primary brought out to the rear, and then this inset extension, so it will sit over 6 stories. It would be a car-free development with the exception of 2 parking spaces, but as highlighted, it's a very sustainable site. Stones Grove from the High Street and the train station to provide obviously alternative modes of transport and amenities for future residents of the development. Just moving on in terms of the proposed elevations, so there's articulation in terms of obviously balconies, large openings, so as an improvement to the existing fabric, obviously it's significant in that regard. Moving on to the floor plan, so the proposed ground floor plan, so what we have is some flats, but then there is communal space for residents as well, so it's co-working space, we've got a gym area, pipe storage, inner residence storage, and airtech storage as well. And then just moving through to the upper floors will be the flats themselves. So, with the exception of 4 flats, all the other flats would benefit from balconies, and those that don't have balconies have additional floor space within the internal dimensions themselves. Again, moving through to the flats. And then this really is just indicative 3D visuals of what the development could look like. Some materials will be conditioned, as will some minor details in regards to the development itself. mention obviously following the viability training is that there will be no affordable housing or Section 96 contributions for this development. The applicant has submitted a viability assessment which has been independently reviewed and verified. Conclusions have been, in terms of obviously those outcomes, have been agreed by Maritime. So there would be no affordable housing or Section 96 contributions. Obviously, on the regard, the applicant is aware that this is high. In terms of the conclusions of the viability assessment itself, that there will be 60% of benchmark value in terms of their return, but their argument they can make this work. Clearly, the benefits of bringing the site forward are clear in terms of what it is in terms of housing supply, but also demoting the high street, bringing people back into the high street. So there are significant benefits in that regard. Proposals of market development plan. So the NPPF is significant rate based on the redevelopment of the brownfield site, which would be one. And also, in terms of obviously the employment carbon will be obviously in the building itself, so that's to make it financially viable to demolish the building, that's why they try to work with it and obviously achieve a positive outcome. Resolution to approve is subject to the securing the burn mitigation as part of the action undertaking and obviously there's the conditions as well.
Thank you. To members, Councillor Pear. Thank you, Chairman. I've just been notified by some apparently the sound isn't coming through on YouTube.
Yeah. I think I need to try resetting the system. I've tried everything else. Sorry, I think I need to try something else. If that's okay.
Okay. We have some issues in line. You're going to restart.
All right, okay. Councillor Galvin.
Thank you, Chair. Whilst there's a worry with the lack of viability with this project, which has led to no Section 106, and it's got very limited parking, I think we've got to look at the positive sides of this. We've got a derelict building on brownfield side, right in the town centre, and all the advantages of bringing that back into use as residential accommodation, I think, outweigh those risks. Gillingham High Street is vibrant, but it still needs a bit of a boost. And I think having the extra footfall, which is only a few minutes walk from this building onto that high street, has got to be a good thing. And also, every site like this takes the pressure off our greenfield sites, and I think we should welcome them. So whilst I feel there is a risk, I think those risks are more than mitigated by the advantages. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. First and foremost, I want to say thank you for the viability training that we received on Monday. It was very useful. It has illuminated me on many of the issues that we have to consider today. I welcome my colleagues' sentiments there. The High Street does need regeneration and needs more footfall. My consideration would be around the materials for finishing. Because it's in such close proximity to the High Street, is there any way that we can ensure that the materials used are going to be sensitive to any future development of the High Street, so we don't have a white elephant, as it were, very close to the High Street? And another one was around the margins being so tight. Is there any way we can ensure that the developer does not have any shortcomings as it relates to building regulations, to ensure that they still adhere to the right materials, the right processes throughout the whole build?
Do you remember? Yeah, Councillor Harris. Mr. Harris.
I can't get my... Oh, yeah. Chairman, thank you very much. I'm almost promoted there. But I understand exactly what you're saying, Councillor Hamandishi. I think what we've got here is an applicant who has, as Councillor Govan has said, has considered the risks, has had very close conversations with my case officer, with my urban design officer over the materials. He's done his own viability assessment. He's seen our independent assessment. He's taken the view, a very positive view about Gillingham. Now, he might, like the Medway Development Company, be happy to accept a lesser profit than the norm. You know, as Martin said on Monday, 15 to 20%. So he might be happy to take a lesser. He's looked very carefully at the market. What he's looking at is combination of young professionals because of the proximity to Gillingham railway station, but also key workers because of the proximity to the hospital and so on. But he's also looked at Gillingham and he's seen that our town centre master plan, and that shows the site as an opportunity site. He's looked at the student accommodation on Sapper Walk. He's looked at the development taking place on James Street, fronting onto Jeffrey Street as well. Also the MDC development on Jeffrey Street. And he's thinking, right, okay, my development is going to be adding to all this, bringing some vitality, raising the profile and of Gillingham, and therefore he's quite confident that he can deliver a sufficient profit, possibly not 15%, but sufficient profit there, which also may make other sites more attractive as well. In relation to your point about building regulations and planning, from a building regulations point of view, there's a very clear regulation that they've got to do certain things, and the building will be inspected at regular times during the build to ensure they are complying with building regulations. From my side, in terms of the planning and the external materials, we've had a very clear discussion with him on those materials and the expectation that we want to see there. He's built that into his risk. There is a condition, as Nick said, covering that, but we will be making sure that we won't be accepting a dumbing down of this. So we're confident that we can, with working with him, we'll deliver what members aspire to. Thank you.
No, thank you for that. Thank you.
Any other member? Oh, Councillor Jones.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. And this, of course, is the second presentation we've had on this site as it came to the last committee meeting. We then adjourned it to discuss the viability as part of the viability training. It was used as a model on that, and I asked for that to be done, so I can't really complain about the outcome of that, which was that we were advised that affordable housing wasn't possible on this site because of the developer costs. Having said that, I'm uneasy about a situation generally arising where we can't build in the 25% affordable housing, and I'm confident that the officers will be looking at each case on its merits, and I'm even more confident, having seen the viability advisors' conclusions and his explanations on Monday, that he rigorously checks these applications and ensures that the economics that's been explained to him is acceptable and viable, and that you know, developers have to have a good case in terms of that. So I can't see any planning reason for voting against this application, but I'm certainly hoping and believing that no precedent will be set in relation to affordable housing contributions in future. Thank you.
Any other member? Councillor Barrett.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. The issue of the parking of the residents there, obviously there's no parking on the facility. Would they be, was anything wrong?
Go on, carry on.
Sorry, am I thought you called me.
It's making so.
Oh,
I'm just being ignored.
right, sorry. Anyhow, the parking situation, are the residents of this proposed development be able to get parking permits, or will they not? Because I feel that they shouldn't, because the lack of parking for residents, and also the spare capability, you know, there is spare spaces evidently, you know, looking at the report, but of course there are visitors to Gillingham who shop, and even in the evening time, the restaurants, etc. So I feel it should be no permits to the new influx of people, but I don't know what the plan is.
Mr. Harris?
If I could answer that one.
Nick.
So yes, it's correct. So there's no parking. Well, it's a car-free development with the exception of 2 disabled bays to the rear. But condition number 19 requires the submission of a parking management plan. And what they'll be required to do as part of that is steps that will be put in place to prevent parking on the street, one of which will be obviously not being able to apply for parking permits. So there is a condition that they will need to be submitted to us, which will prevent that.
So, Councillor Etheridge.
Thank you, Chairman, and I agree with my colleague over there in terms of materials, especially external. Just to draw members' attention to page 27 of the report, second paragraph, where it states very clearly, this is a large, imposing, brutalist building that's plonked in the middle of Gillingham. And the principle behind the proposal is to reuse the fabric of the existing building, and I fully appreciate what Mrs. Harris has come back to and told the committee in regards to materials. However, looking at that and the description that we have here, surely there's something we can do to break up the contours of this building to make it more acceptable, not only to visitors, but to the residents of the local area. Thank you.
Sorry, Chairman, I'm happy to come back on that, because I think if you look at the external design here that you see on the 3D sketch views, that's exactly what they've tried to do in terms of breaking up that, particularly those side elevations, to create some interest, that fenestration coming in there, the setbacks in terms of the windows will all create the interest that Councillor Etheridge quite rightly would like to see here. And that will ensure that the building, although brutalist, will still be appropriate and of good quality. The other thing, if it's all right with you, Chairman, I just wanted to come back on the affordable housing aspect, not necessarily to address it for this site, but understanding your point, Councillor Jones, that one of the difficulties that we have with brownfield sites is in relation to viability and Section 106 for affordable homes. However, a conversation I'm having with developers and indeed Homes England is that there is still the opportunity, if we don't include them in Section 106, for them to get grant funding from Homes England, which then makes the affordable homes viable then. It doesn't give us the guarantee, because it's not, we can only get a guarantee through a Section 106. It's a conversation I'm having with Homes England, because it's almost this circle of discussion where I'm saying local planning authorities want the certainty. We can only get the certainty if there's a Section 106. But if there's a Section 106, it makes the affordable homes not viable on brownfield. The grant funding makes them viable to deliver affordable homes, but there's no guarantee. So it's this circle. So I'm having those conversations with developers and with Homes England to try and resolve that issue.
All right, okay. Councillor Howcroft-Scott.
Thank you, Chair. I also appreciated the first-class training that we all received this week. I just want to ask the panel to look at, the committee to look at page 24. Now, I worked really closely with the wonderful councillor Clive Johnson, and I have to say he's put an objection into this, and I'm really worried, because as a planning committee we are responsible for developing our towns, and I know the building does look an eyesore at the moment, but that does look slightly better, but I still don't think there's enough landscaping. Parking's been mentioned. The roads are really narrow, so it's not just about parking, it's about highway accessibility, in my opinion. And, I am absolutely devastated that some of the flats do not have any outdoor access for their social and emotional well-being, and, and have bigger insides. It's not the same. Any mental health charity will tell you that. And as for the lack of 106 money, I find that mortally offensive, in my opinion, and I'm just worried that Medway people won't afford to live there, and it's like a secular challenge. I feel like Roadrunner, if you like. We need housing for local people, but they're being priced out of this. Is there not some covenant that we could put in there to say, look, Medway Hospital is around the corner, surely people working there get first dibs on the development, something like that?
Chairman, I understand everything that Councillor Howcroft-Scott has said, and the concerns and the worries there. We've worked really hard on this scheme. It is a site which has lain vacant for quite a considerable time, and could, if this application is not approved, lay vacant for another considerable time and add nothing to the town centre at all. It is a site which has been identified as an opportunity for development in the adopted master plan for this site. As Nick Roberts has said, it complies with our existing local plan, it complies with the NPPF policies as well. We've worked hard to make sure that the design is appropriate and that the internal standards meet with the national standards as well as our own. And I appreciate what Councillor Howcroft-Scott has said in terms of not having an external space. And I totally understand that. In this respect, it is literally just a short walk over the bridge to the Balmoral Gardens and the open space there. So understand those concerns. We had those concerns. We worked very hard to address them, and we feel that this is a good scheme, and we're strongly recommending it to you, Chairman. Thank you.
Councillor Peake.
Thank you for your answer. As someone who quite blatantly late in life gets why well-being is really important and our work in mental health, so I want to endorse that concern. Is there any way of softening the brutality of the look of this building? I'm not talking about creating space that doesn't exist, but is there anything that can be done with the look? Because your immediate environment is very important. That's my first question. My second question is, can I have an understanding of how they will stop on-street parking? There are people who could just walk round the corner but would rather jump in their car, and then those same people may park illegally and take a chance. So even though it's so near, that could still be an issue. So how do they enforce or encourage to stop people from parking on the streets, please?
Chairman, thank you. Yeah. Chairman, a number of things. I think, sorry, there was one question that Councillor Howcroft-Scott raised which I didn't answer, so my apologies. In terms of the who occupies them, that would normally come through a Section 106 and affordable homes and so on. But we have worked very closely with the applicant on this in terms of who his market is for this. It is for young professionals, but it is also for key workers. That proximity to the hospital, he very much sees that those key workers, those people working and living, those people working in Medway close to this site are likely to be, that's the market he's aiming for. In relation to your point, Councillor Peake, I can only go back to these 3D sketches and say that they've worked very hard to break up those elevations, to create some balconies, to create some interest there in this, and to create a building which is attractive in this setting. In relation to car parking, I can only go back to what Nick said earlier. There is that condition 19 on parking management. There is controlled parking zones in that immediate area. So if someone does choose to park there, they're going to get a ticket. And that's the control.
Councillor Pearce.
Thank you, Chairman. My view on it is it's not a perfect scheme. And I agree with a lot of the comments that have been made by members of the committee, but there are good things to this. These opportunities don't come around that often, being a brownfield site, and having so much of a building there in the first place to contend with. But there are good things to this. I like the green roof, which I think is very positive. They've tried, looking at the drawings, they have tried to soften it with some landscaping around the edges of the site. But I think these opportunities don't come around that often with these types of sites and the viability issues that they have. So on that basis, because I don't want to see this decay and potentially sit there for another 10 years, I'll be supporting the application. Thank you.
Okay. This site is clearly something that needs... Oh, sorry. Councillor Hamadashi.
Sorry, thank you. Just one last question. Just in terms of the affordability for key workers. If we take a look at the average, just on the Google search on average, it ranges between £24,000 a year to £31,000 a year. You know, the borrowing at 4x your income, roughly 125,000. So how will this venture enable key workers actually afford to buy it? Because my guesstimation of the costings that we did on the viability training was it's going to be far in excess of that amount anyway. So the average key worker working for a hospital is not best placed to afford such a accommodation anyway.
Thank you. I think this development is a very risky development for the developer, that's for sure. It is in the town centre, and if we're looking to support the regeneration of town centres, we need to support something like this. And yes, it doesn't come with 106, doesn't come with affordable housing, which is something I regret. But the positives is that it is, in the sense of open space, a short distance across the bridge into the gardens, and there is a car park there as well. So I think it is a balanced decision. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I move the recommendation to approve the application subject to A, to pay the tariff for bird mitigation as set out in the report on page 35, and B, conditions 1 to 22. Thank you.
Seconded, Chair.
Those in favour of the proposal?
That's 15, Chairman.
Okay. That's everybody, yeah? So the application for 48 Green Street, Gillingham, has been approved. Can I now move on to 6 and Councillor Pearce? And can I invite the 2 other ward members to come up?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the chocolates.
Before you start, yes, enjoy the chocolates, yes. Right, so we're going to have a timer, which is on this wonderful iPad. It's going to go through 5 minutes, and after 5 minutes it will repeat. Okay? And I'm going to do the presentation needs to start first.
Thank you, Chairman. And I love Councillor Crowe's enthusiasm, because I'm very enthusiastic about this application as well. So members, this relates to the former Deangate Ridge Golf Club. The proposal is set out on page 45 of your agenda. So it's about creating a new community parkland. The proposed works to facilitate the change of use would consist of a change of use from the former golf course to a community parkland, creating new paths and boundary treatment, reconfiguration of the existing car park and access routes, landscaping, tree scrub, planting, installation of various bits of furniture, interpretation boards, both for heritage and, importantly, ecological. And the proposal will be accessible to members of the public and seeks to improve existing biodiversity and ecology measures within the site. So this is the application site here. This is Peninsula Way, coming past Bell's Lane that comes down there. So this is Ducks Court Road coming down there. We've got the running track on the opposite side. We've got the Bowls Club just here, the former golf clubhouse just outside the application site there. And then this is part, but not all, of the golf course. There's a part which comes down here. The reason for the application not being the whole of the golf course is this is probably it's the first phase of what could be achieved and will be achieved in this area here. But it also reflects the area that was, when we had HIF, was a strategic environmental mitigation area, i.e. the ecological mitigation between potential urban area and the SSSI and around there. So that's follows that what was previously proposed there in terms of site area. So this shows in blue the areas of the former golf course which are not within the application site, so part of that area there. And then what was the 9-hole golf course here, and the driving range through here, as well as a clubhouse. Some photographs of the site looking towards the clubhouse, the paths which currently exist, and then some views there in terms of how the area has evolved since it was a golf course to what you see today, but in an unmanaged way, or a largely unmanaged way. And this shows the general arrangement of the proposal. So coming in through here, past the bowls club, parking area will be in this area here, old clubhouse just there. And then this shows how the parkland will be set out in terms of contouring, in terms of landscaping, tree planting, paths, etc. And this is quite an important master plan here, because what it shows is these areas in here, that area there and that area there, which are part of the site of special scientific interest. So they're very important ecologically there. And how the paths that are proposed as part of this community parkland don't go within those areas to seek to protect and keep people away from those areas. And then this is the proposed car parking area just in there. Now, members, you'll see from the report that Sport England have objected to the application. However, having said that, their objection is mostly led as a result of their liaison and discussions with England Golf. But they do comment that we note that the proposal, a community park, will create opportunities for informal activity which would be accessible to the local community, which is in line with our strategy, uniting the movement. Sport England does recognise that the proposal has a lot of merit. I think that's a bit of an understatement, actually, when it says a lot of merit. Now, paragraph, apologies. Paragraph 103 of the NPPF talks about existing open space, sport and recreational buildings and land, including playing fields, should not be built on unless, and we're not proposing building on this, the development is for alternative sports and recreation provision, the benefits of which clearly outweigh the loss of the current or former use. And that is exactly what we're saying here, that this will significantly benefit a much greater part of the community than benefited from the golf course. So the golf course closed 5 years ago, and since then has functioned as a community asset, and I'm sure the ward councillors will comment on that. And that community asset has had huge benefits for a wide or wider part of the local community. But as I said before, there's been limited management. The community park, as proposed, is probably going to, well, not probably, will be the first, albeit the largest phase of a community sport leisure provision at Deangate. So it won't be solely related to this site. This application just covers that site. But we will be looking to deal with this area. We will be looking to deal with this area in here. And we will be looking to deal with the football pitches and running track opposite. And my colleague Bob Diamond is working on getting some external funding to deliver 4G pitches or 4D pitch on the running track side of Ducks Court Road. So we've talked. So this facility, community park, will be accessible to all members of the public, and will significantly provide for wider health benefits to that community. In addition to the community and health gains, the improved management linked to all the conditions that I'll refer to, will bring ecological benefits and biodiversity net gain. We're talking around about 19% biodiversity net gain here. And you'll see in the report reference to paragraphs 180D and 186 of the NPPF, which talk about those ecological and biodiversity net gains and the importance of them. We have here a very, very important site of special scientific interest. It's of national importance. Some might say even international importance, but definitely of national importance. And that extends into this area here. This proposal will help to protect that SSSI. Paragraph 180 of the NPPF also seeks to protect the intrinsic character and beauty of the countryside. I consider that this proposal, with the management that will come with it, will achieve exactly that. In terms of access, I do appreciate that Ducks Court Road, you've got good access coming up the Peninsula Way, roundabout here, and then it's not great coming down Ducks Court Road, and I think everybody will accept that. So that will be the access, but it will come into 67 car parking spaces and cycle parking just in there. As part of ongoing works for the next phases, we will be looking at how we can improve Ducks Court Road in terms of that pedestrian access, safe pedestrian access to this. Very valuable facilities. Now, the conditions build on the proposals in this. We are looking for further information regarding SUDS, air quality mitigation, landscape and ecology management, biodiversity method statement, additional details of landscaping, the SEMP, archaeology, as well as parking. So just in conclusion, I really do advocate this proposal to you, members. I think it will be of huge benefit to Medway, but a particular huge benefit to that local community. There will be health, leisure and sport gains, as well as benefits for ecology and to the value of the countryside. Recommending approval, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. So before we go to the ward members, just to explain, there is a timer for 5 minutes, and after 5 minutes to be reset. And I understand that Councillor Crozo is speaking on behalf of the three. Councillor Crozo.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman, and thanks to the committee for allowing us to address you this evening. I speak on behalf of Councillor Michael Pearce to my right and Councillor Ron Sands to my left, and my address to the committee includes their comments. Mr. Chairman and members, in late 1960, land was acquired, and by 1972, a golf course and clubhouse established at Deangate Ridge with the help of the Royal Engineers. This new facility was primarily for the residents of Strood and outlying areas and funded entirely by the then Strood Rural District Council. In February of 2018, at the end of a 7-year extremely disruptive infrastructure improvement programme that included a dedicated new driving range, new 9-hole 3-par course, the now Medway Council announced its closure, along with the associated sports facility in Ducks Court Road. They cited an annual loss of some £200,000 a year and the need to balance the budget as the reason for closure, giving only 5 days' notice of the decision and without any public consultation. Following a call-in in March of that year and subsequent reconsideration by Cabinet, by late August of that year, and after much public outcry, the last round of golf had been played and the course and sports facility were closed. Mr. Chairman, during that February Cabinet meeting, Instruction 24/2018 was given to officers to begin planning for the construction and development of a new sports centre for the Hoo Peninsula. 6 years later, there is still no new sports facility on the Hoo Peninsula, although, Mr. Chairman, Medway Council did rename the Hundred of Hoo swimming pool as a sports centre and allowed some continuation of football and running at the sports field. The true reason for the closure became evident to residents when the original Deangate Ridge Community Parkland proposal was announced, which formed part of the now withdrawn £170 million infrastructure fund project. And an earlier 2007 Local Plan Regulation 18 consultation also suggested that up to 1,600 houses could be built on the site. The numbers of houses proposed for the site has reduced significantly over time, and we now tentatively understand that no residential development plans for any part of the site, not just, as Dave pointed out, the 43.3 hectares detailed here in this application. And for your information, Mr. Chairman, and for members, the whole of the site is detailed in a registered asset of community value that is registered with Medway Council for a further 5 years on the 6th of April 2023. Deangate Ridge is the only significant publicly owned green space on the Hoo Peninsula which does not currently have an area similar to Capstan Country Park or Riverside Country Park to serve the health and well-being needs of its local residents. However, this application still carries the element and narrative of the original Deangate Ridge parkland living proposal. Other recent reports of some advertising have rightly described Deangate as a country park, similar in nature to those at Capstan and Riverside. This proposal must surely be developed and recognised as a country park, and we welcome this emerging recognition by Medway Council and ask that its description or designation, whatever you want to call it, is changed from community park to country park forthwith. We are nevertheless grateful to Medway Council for progressing with plans to turn Deangate into a country park as a standalone project, which is not linked to future development proposals. This is important as Deangate Ridge needs to serve the growing population of the Hoo Peninsula and Strood today. Mr. Chairman, since the closure of the golf course, local residents have been encouraged to use Deangate Ridge as an unofficial country park. The area has become very popular with dog walkers and those who want to enjoy fresh air and exercise in the beautiful and quiet surroundings. We accept the golf course may never fully return to Deangate Ridge, although when we visit profitable public courses such as Cobtree Farm in Maidstone or High Elms in Bromley, both of which incorporate golf and country park facilities, we do live in hope. There is much potential for this combination at Deangate Ridge, where the driving range and new pitch and putt course could be brought back into use. They would provide a revenue stream for the site as a whole. These parts too, Mr. Chairman, are still formally designated, as Dave has already said, as a golf course and have not had their uses changed. We respectfully ask that the committee note that Sports England had formally objected to this planning application. The reason for their objection included the loss of golf in an administrative area of some 280,000 people, without mitigation for its loss. Despite golf growing in popularity since 2018, Sports England have requested a dialogue with the applicant. The reinstatement of the driving range and par 3 9-hole course may be an area where both organisations can work together and mitigate the loss of the larger golf course site. It should again be noted that the bowls club and the running track and football pitches are not part of the application, but do have a bearing upon it. Mr. Chairman, Dutch Court Road, that intersects the sites, is a narrow country lane with no footpaths. We are pleased that it is acknowledged that there is no safe pedestrian access to Deangate Ridge or safe pedestrian crossing over Peninsula Way from Hoo to Dutch Court Road. Additionally, the proposal does not provide for sustainable and, more importantly, safe modes of transport to and from the site. We also acknowledge that this will be an ongoing developing issue to be resolved as the project progresses. There is also a proposal to introduce parking charges at Deangate Ridge, along with Capstan Park and the other one, which I can't remember for me. We are very concerned that the lack of parking enforcement in Dutch Court Road, where it has become unsafe because of inconsiderate parking by those using the running track and the football pitches, that the new parking charges would exacerbate those parking issues. We are pleased, Mr. Chairman, that various assessments of the site have finally now been published as part of this planning application. It's fantastic that ecological assessments show a wide range of protected wildlife using the site. This includes our wonderful nightingales, of course, great crested newts, bats and slow worms. The Lodge Hill site of special scientific interest is within and largely immediately adjacent to the Deangate Ridge to the north. It is really important that we protect this nationally important bird sanctuary for the future. We welcome measures in the plan to protect the SSSI and mitigate for harm caused by recreational disturbance from the change of use. In conclusion, Mr Chairman, the planning application tonight is not the end of the Deangate story. There will need to be plans brought forward for the remaining parts of the site, including the clubhouse, driving range, par 3 course, bowls club, the adjacent sports area and its buildings and the seating stand that sits there. Medway Council will need to fund and manage this country park and sports facility in exactly the same way as they do with other parks and projects in other parts of the borough. Although we have mentioned that there is plenty of opportunity for it to grow to be self-sustaining. Mr Chairman, finally, can I pay testament to the many people from all across the Medway towns and beyond who supported the retention of this much-loved and needed Medway-owned asset, who have for 5 long years waited for some confirmation that Deangate Ridge will continue to be used for the ultimate intention it was purchased for, the health and well-being of our residents. For us, as ward councillors, although we support the application, it is for us still a leap of faith in this new administration to do the right thing for the Hoo Peninsula. Thank you, Mr Chairman. I thank the committee and particularly you, Mr Chairman, for allowing us time to present this project.
Thank you. And just to say that those in the room get to see the timer. Those who are viewing it at home get to see the councillor who's speaking. Any member? Councillor Galvin.
Thank you, Chair. Just a little bit of the background here. I was a cabinet member when the decision was made to close the golf course. As has been said, the golf course was losing several £100,000 a year. And unlike the old Strood Rural District Council, Medway, as an upper tier authority, was in a much more difficult financial position. In fact, somebody told me a little while ago that the old Strood Rural District Council was the richest council in the country because of that time. If you look at the huge amount of industry that was out of the Isle of Grain and who with the oil refineries, etc., they had a huge income. So they could well support the subsidy of a minority sport, which golf is. And why I welcome this tonight, because I think this new facility will not be just for a minority, it'll be for everybody who wants to go out and get a bit of fresh air, take their children for a walk or whatever. I think this is a good use for the site. I welcome it very much. And obviously I would substantially disagree with Sports England's comments, because I think now we've got a facility that's going to be able to use for minority. I think this is a very good scheme. I've only got one minor niggle. If we look at the penultimate paragraph on page 51, where it says we're needing a mitigation overview provided. So we need a detailed biodiversity method statement and a management and monitoring plan. Are those things really necessary? Because they're going to be expensive to provide. I think we all agree this is a good thing. So why do we have to prove it's a good thing by going through all that rigmarole, which is going to be a huge expense for the authority, which is us? Money we could far better spend on other things. I mean, if this was a balanced application and a marginal thing, I could well understand that sort of detail would be necessary. But I'm going to be presumptuous here. I think every one of us in this room will vote for this wholeheartedly. So I can't really see the need for that unnecessary paperwork. Thank you, Chair.
Chairman, thank you. I mean, first of all, can I say that I agree with everything that Councillor Croser has said on behalf of the ward councillors. I did play golf. I learnt to play golf there. I was very poor at golf, but that's no reason for me supporting this application. In terms of your question, Councillor Golfin, I think it's a matter of the applicant has provided a lot of information. It's very, very good and very useful. Our consultees, KCC Ecology and so on say, yes, it's as good as far as it can go. We can make it even better, which will be an even better facility for the public. both in terms of appreciating walking around and benefiting, but also from their understanding of all the ecology that's there and our understanding of that as well. So it's not a matter of completely new, it's building on what they've already been provided.
Councillor Howcroft-Scott.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to start by saying thank you, Dave, and your team for a comprehensive report. Especially liked reading page 46. This is a no-brainer, you know, for health and well-being, the richness of the diversity, and for all the people in Medway, really. You know, it's going to be beautiful, it's going to have tranquility, it's going to have biodiversity, you know, how can I say, beauty even. Unlike the three independents in name but only, they don't know our regen officer, our councillor, Councillor Curry. Simon Curry is green to the core. He is the most committed eco-warrior, friendly, park-friendly, green space-friendly person ever. Unlike the people opposite who build schools on green spaces. That's not what we're about. Thank you. No comments when he's not here. Simon Curry is wonderful, and don't diss him. Thank you.
Councillor Etheridge.
Thank you, Chairman. When this first came before the Regen Committee many years ago about closing Deangate, I was the Vice Chairman on that Regen Committee that voted against it and recommended it go back to Cabinet. And Councillor Clark, who was the Chairman at the time, seconded that view, and that's why it went back to Committee or Cabinet for a review. I quite support this proposal that's here tonight. However, there are still some concerns that I have. So my first concern is that, okay, we've got these paths and things going through, but how much do we have in there in terms for disabled access and wheelchairs? There seems to be nothing coming forward on that tonight. We're talking about the health and well-being of visitors, but once again, there's no public facilities on this site, so what are they supposed to do if they're caught short in the middle of the field? And then finally, there is an opportunity here to generate some income from this site, as developers, and Dave is well aware, a number of developers have to relocate some of the subspecies they find on that site. So there's a potential here, if applicable, for a resite for amphibians, vertebrates, and all sorts of other animals, if suitable, onto this site, so it would become an official release site as well.
Chairman, thank you very much. I think Councillor Etheridge makes some really good points. I think firstly in terms of the access and the paths, further work's been done by the team on that. I think we've got enough in relation to approving the planning application, but the team who put the application in are working on those finite details. And absolutely, you're right, this has got to be access for all to use this. Secondly, in terms of facilities, the next phase, as I understand it, the next phase is coming forward, hopefully, will include the former clubhouse, which will have facilities. It'll be like a visitor information centre, and it will have facilities there. But I will pass your comments on to the team in terms of is there something temporarily that can be provided here prior to that bigger facility coming forward. And then in relation to ecology, absolutely right. We're in discussions with KCC Ecology and Natural England in terms of biodiversity, and those, if they can't be provided on site, having those off sites that you could translocate creatures, as you quite rightly say. And we're talking about a number of sites in Medway, which include our country parks, and will include this site as well. It's a good point, Councillor Etheridge. Thank you.
Councillor Hamadashi.
Thank you, thank you. As somebody also that tried golf on several occasions, I quite couldn't understand or fathom a sport where the whole aim is to play as little golf as possible. I just couldn't understand that. So I do welcome this wholeheartedly. It's very important that we have spaces for people to walk. I like the sentiment going from the minority to the majority, which this will endeavour. My question is about not missing the opportunity to include some academic value to this space, as they do with the Riverside Park, where there's a facility where young people can go learn about the environment and have some sort of classwork taking place there. That could also be used as some way of supplementing revenue in days to come, really. So, thank you.
Chairman, thank you very much. Maybe I should tell a little bit of a story. I once got a hole-in-one on this course. Unfortunately, it wasn't the hole I was aiming for. But in terms of educational value, 100% agree with you, Councillor Hammond-Ishii. There will initially be these information boards around the country park, which will be informing people about the site of special scientific interest, the ecology values. But as Councillor Hubbard did whisper to me just then, future, when we're looking at this building, the former clubhouse coming forward, I'm very sure that will not only include lots of facilities for people, for a visitor centre, but also very importantly that education as well.
Councillor Peake.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very positive about this, despite that comment that was made, which was totally unnecessary. As somebody who supports any outdoor activity, especially sport, especially for the youngsters, I think it's a great shame what happened in schools in my time. And I'm going to show my bias now. Is there any chance of any rugby fields in the future? That's one question. Second question is, you mentioned the link road from the main road to get to the car park, and you said it's not adequate. So is there any chance of making that adequate? Is it because it's narrow, so if you've got one vehicle? Yeah, that's a nightmare in areas like that. So is there an answer to that, please? Thank you.
Chairman, thank you very much. Two good points, Councillor Peake. I think in relation to the community park and the rugby point, no, not on the community park part. On the other side of the road, as Councillor Crows has said, you've got football pitches, you've got a running track, you've got a changing rooms facilities there. Bob Diamond, my colleague at the council, is working on getting external funding to improve those facilities there, get a 4G pitch there. We've also got some Section 106 money which will be added to that, so we should see some improvements over there. Whether or not includes rugby, I can't guarantee anything on that, but certainly they're working with a lot of local football teams, and Councillor Sands, Councillor Crozer and Councillor Pearce are aware of some local football teams who are interested in that site, so we're hopefully helping them on that. In relation to the Ducks Court access road, it is very narrow. I think Councillor Crozer explained it very well there in terms of you wouldn't want to walk down it, and also the cross. There's no crossing currently, pedestrian crossing of Peninsula Way. So there are things that we've got to work on in the future in terms of getting that crossing from Peninsula Way, but also finding a way to do improvements down Ducks Court Road to provide facilities to people to be able to walk and access this important country park safely. So that's not part of this proposal, but it is part of ongoing discussions and the thought process.
Any other member? If not, I go to the Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I move the recommendation to approve the application subject to conditions 1 to 16 as laid out in the main papers. Thank you.
Seconded.
Those in favour of the proposal? 15. You put his hand down.
That's 14.
15? Oh, right, so 16. Okay. Excellent. So the application for the former Deangate Golf Club is agreed. Thank you. Thank you, all members. So I'm going to move on to item 7, and again, Mr. Harris is going to present.
Chairman, thank you very much. And subject to your permission, the committee's permission, I've got an email from Councillor Maple, who can't make it today, and he's asked if I could read that out, but that'd be subject to your agreement, Chairman. So another application that I'm really pleased to promote to you, members. First floor of the Pentagon Centre. We all know how that struggles. We all know that Chatham Town Centre, like all town centres up and down the country, are really struggling at this moment in time. And we need to find a way to revitalise and revigorate our town centres. Now, part of that is getting people to come into the centre, because if they're in there, they're more likely to use other facilities or demand other facilities there. Now, as part of this proposal, we're looking at that first floor. You'll see from your reports, the planning history here, there is an application for a lawful development certificate for a healthy living centre on that first floor, and I'll show the plans for that. That's now been granted, that lawful development certificate. We've also got 2 applications to facilitate this proposal and the healthy living centre in terms of external changes, and they've been approved as well. This application is for an innovation hub. Now, you'll see from your description on page 59 there at the top, the existing use of the Pentagon Centre and the proposed use both fall within Class E of the use class order. So why does it require consent? It requires consent, as set out on page 61 at the bottom there in italics, because of a condition which was originally imposed back in 1971 when the permission was granted for the Pentagon Centre itself. So that's the reason it requires consent. So you can see the area there. And these are some internal images of the building. And anyone who's been into the Pentagon Centre recently, which I'm sure you all have, will know that the ground floor there are some vacant units, but on the upper floor these units have all been cleared. Some of them are moved downstairs, some of them are vacated totally. But we need to bring some life and vitality back to this first floor, which will bring people back into Chatham. What's proposed here is for this innovation hub. So it's an emphasis on short-term lets, flexible lease arrangements, supporting local businesses, startups and entrepreneurs, providing for some mentorship, some workshops, but also there is the potential for some co-working areas in here as well. So we're encouraging more residential in the town centres. So we know that people living there may commute out of the area for work, but will also do some home working. Now, they may not want to work in their flat all day, every day. They may want to come down and have an area where they can see people for that mental health aspect, but also possibly speak to other people of similar ilk, and you may start to find people then saying, well, actually, you do that. I do this. We can work together on that, which is part of what an innovation hub is all about. So that's the existing layout. You've got the escalators coming up here, down there, and you've got the glass lifts just in here. And these are the various units that exist around here. There are 2, from my inspection today, there are 2 which are currently open here, a Chinese herbal place and a small cafe as well. And this shows how it will be laid out as the hub with offices, communal seating areas, meeting rooms, support space, etc. in here. So people can go in, they can hire an office, they can work for an office, they can hire a desk, they can speak to other people, they can set up their businesses here, and it then enable them to develop that to move to more expanded accommodation elsewhere once they get that business set up. But in addition, this is the Healthy Living Centre, which is, so if I can go back to the slide, the Healthy Living Centre is this area around here. So you can see how the 2 could then work together to make that first floor a vibrant place where people are coming into the Pentagon Centre, going up here, using these facilities, and then on the way either in or out, will actually be looking to demand or use other services within the Pentagon Centre or within Chatham Centre as a whole. And the reason for putting this slide up, because it is part of this bigger regeneration plan that we've got. We need to do something about our town centres. We need to revitalise them. And we're doing that in Chatham. So we've got the proposals that I've just outlined for the Pentagon Centre. Then we've got Mountbatten House and the accommodation being proposed in there with the extension in here. We've already seen Harrison Point being delivered up there. We've got works ongoing in relation to the paddock to improve their outdoor space in here. And then in this area here, we've got Chatham Waterfront, 182 new homes with commercial and civic space on the ground floor, and a significant area of open space around this area here, make it a far more attractive area for people to enjoy the waterfront. Then there are potential other regeneration zones in here, and then we've got further discussions ongoing regarding Debenhams. So this starts to show how the Pentagon piece fits into that wider regeneration jigsaw, which is so important for the future of Chatham. And then that's just another CGI showing how Mountbatten House will come forward, and that development is starting within the next couple of months. And that's Garrison Point, which has been delivered. So members, I'm really supporting this application to you. I think it's vital and it's so important to the future of Chatham Centre. Thank you, Chairman.
Any member? Councillor Peake.
Sorry, do you want me to read out? Councillor?
Oh, sorry. If you could read out Councillor Maple's contribution.
Thank you, Chairman. Obviously, I'm not as eloquent as Councillor Maple, so I will try my best to read this out. What he's saying is, I'm writing in support of the application in Chatham Central and Brompton Ward for the creation of an innovation hub within the Pentagon Centre. A lot has been mentioned of the long-held ambition to bring much-needed health provision for the centre of Chatham to the first floor of the Pentagon. I welcome this application, which completes the picture for the remaining space on this floor. Particularly in this post-COVID working environment, this innovation hub will bring modern, comfortable space for collaboration and cooperation. Other nearby spaces remain at capacity, so there is an absolute commercial need in the centre of Chatham. This will, alongside the anticipated health provision, also give a much-needed and welcome boost to the existing businesses and shops. This hub means the existing shops become the places people pop to get their lunch, pick up a greetings card or purchase a dozen red roses for a loved one. It is Valentine's Day. As this is a council building, it is right and proper it comes to committee for decision making. I note very positively, no objections to the proposals have been made. Once again, apologies I'm not in Medway this evening to talk to this application, and my thanks to officers for their work on this and Councillor Edwards for her political leadership on this project. It is exciting to think of the inspirational ideas and innovation that will come with those who will be based at the hub, and if agreed this evening, something that truly makes me proud to be Medway. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Peake.
Well, first of all, here to the letter from Councillor Maple. As somebody who is very keen on the idea of regeneration, which includes the private enterprise, to encourage entrepreneurship and the reward that people that do this deserve. But as somebody who speaks from experience, it can be quite daunting. I mean, where do you start when you want to start up a business? And what do you do first? Is it a business plan? And how much do you invest in that in time and money? What is your next step? I wish I'd had a hub when I did this. And the location's ideal. It's right in the centre, good use of the area. And I really do think a hub like this could make all the difference to people that want to, explore and develop their initiatives. And then this growth, if you like, of and encouraging SMEs, as far as I'm concerned, sits side by side, as you've already said, with the overall idea of regeneration. It's a very important part of it. So I'm really enthusiastic about this. And I hope also that even when you set up a business, questions still come along, especially about tax and things like that. I mean, I was lucky enough I could afford an accountant and a lawyer, but not everybody can do. So I'm hoping that this will be a facility where it's open for people to go back and have that dialogue. So, thank you.
Councillor Galvin.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm very much in support of this for all the reasons that's been mentioned. The only shame is it's taken so long to get to this stage of actually having a planning application coming before this committee. Just to explain a little bit of the background for this, that even when we bought the Pentagon Centre, which was 4 or 5 years ago now, the first floor hadn't traded for retail well for a long, long time. So as a sort of make-do, a deal was done with a lot of local charities so they could take possession of the premises up there on a peppercorn rent on the basis that they paid the non-domestic rate, because unfortunately as the owners of the building, and that's the case at this moment of time where you've got virtually the whole of that floor now vacant, Medway Council is having to pay the non-domestic rate on that space, which is a huge drain on the council's resources. We only get 49% of that back, because the government keeps 50% and Kent Fire and Rescue take the odd 1%. And I think that we'd all not worry about that 1% because it has a very, very good use. So this is complementary to the Healthy Living Centre, as Dave has said. It's interesting talking to, a while back, to Alande, who are the council's managing agents for the Pentagon. They've got similar retail outlets that have had healthy living centres put in them of a similar size, and that's increased the footfall into those centres by well over 1 million a year. So with the Healthy Living Centre plus the Innovation Hub, I think we've got a fantastic centre there in the middle of Chatham, which is going to, spin off, as has been said, and improve the economic viability of the whole area. That coupled with the work that's been done by MDC, and I'm pleased that I've learned in the last few days that Garrison Point is now 100% sold, and my understanding is that the off-plan sales for the waterfront are progressing well as well, even in these difficult times. So I think this is a fantastic scheme. I'm only so sad that it wasn't me having to declare an interest and leave the room, because when I was responsible for it only 9 months ago. But it's great to see it coming forward, and I'd urge all colleagues in the room to support it wholeheartedly, please.
Councillor Howcroft-Scott.
Yes, I loved our leader, Vince Maple, bringing the Valentine's twin into this, because I do believe it's an enhancement. I'd also like to thank the talented Councillor Edwards, who has a vision not just for Chatham but the whole of Strood and Rochester, which is more than the current MP and former councillor Kelly Tolhurst. She wanted the place bulldozed. So upwards and onwards, regenerate and make life healthier and happier for our Medway constituents. Thank you.
Right. Undoubtedly, the repurposing of the High Street is something that's going to be advantageous to Chatham, and the Innovation Hub is an excellent way of actually people to network as well, because especially people who are home working in inappropriate locations, sometimes on a kitchen table in their bedroom. So if they can go somewhere and socialise and meet and maybe exchange views. So I'm going to go to the Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I move the recommendation to approve the application subject to conditions 1 and 2 as laid out in the main papers.
I'll second that, Chair.
Those in favour of the proposal?
15, Chair.
Thank you. So the application for the Innovation Hub at the Pentagon Shopping Centre has been approved. Yeah. Can we go for a break, please? It'll be 5 minutes. Thank you. just for the information to the ward councillor, everybody gets to see the timer, but members at home, people at home get to see you. So be aware. And so we're going to move to item 8, and Mary's going to speak to this.
Thank you, Chair. So this is an application for a single-storey extensions, a first-floor extension and a roof extension to create 6 one-bedroom flats. The site has got some planning history, and we'll come to this in a bit. So here's the site. It's the big building, but just note that most of the former car park for the office building is excluded from the current application site, so the boundary comes across here. There's some street views from West Street at the top and from Jeffrey Street at the bottom, and you can see here that there have been various additions and extensions to the building in the past. So coming on to the site history, there's been a prior approval application for the conversion of most of the building into 12 flats. That's been granted. You can't extend or alter the outside of the building as part of the prior approval process, so you can't do it in that form of application. So they made a full planning application previously for various alterations to create a further 4 flats. So that's the 12 that were approved by the prior approval route, because they were just internal alterations, and then 4 with some minor changes. And the minor changes previously approved are shown in red here. So there's little tiny sort of single-storey extensions and then a first-floor extension as well. So it currently has planning permission for 16 flats. This application is for a loft conversion to create a further 2 flats in the roof, and that's shown in purple on there. That's the access up from the first floor. So these plans are as previously approved, except for the loft conversion, which provides an additional 2 flats. So you can see the loft conversion there. The plans are a bit confusing to some people because they only show the flats that were granted full planning permission. They don't show the 12 flats that were granted through the prior approval process. So, but the whole building basically already has permission for conversion to flats, but the current application is just adding these extra 2 in the loft. So these just show you where the extra loft conversion is, here and here. You can see the sort of mishmash of roofs at the moment. And that also shows the sort of location from Jeffrey Street. It's up here, the loft conversion, but in the context of the building, it's not hugely significant. So back to there. In summary, 16 flats have already been approved on this site, which is in a sustainable location close to Gillingham town centre, and no objections raised to the addition of 2 further flats. Thank you, Chair.
Is it agreed that Councillor Printer speaks? Thank you. And you start now.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Chair and members, for allowing me to speak today. I'll get to the point because I know I've got limited time. Firstly, may I say that I have the full support of my fellow ward colleagues. This application looks at in isolation. It might appear to be just for the 6 flats, and as the officer has said, it will increase the number with permission to 18. It's worth noting that the developer had originally applied for 16 but withdrew that application in favour of the 12, presumably as that was a more acceptable number. And they do seem determined to fully develop the site to 18 as numbered on the plans. Both the applications for the 12 and then the 4 were granted without conditions for parking and without provision for a suitable refuse store. I'm grateful that these conditions have been applied to this application. However, it's for this application only. What will happen to the other 12 flats? You'll make provision for 6, but not the other 12, so only 6. Is that right? As we know, the streets around our town centres can be blighted by fly tipping, particularly where no provision has been made to redevelopment, not just in Gillingham but across Medway. One in particular in Rainham is flagged regularly, where residents have no place to store the rubbish in their flats and it goes straight out onto the pavement only to be blown around and become an eyesore, detrimental to the surrounding area and the residents. The original site, which many years ago you might recall was Gillingham Police Station, had sufficient parking, as the officer has mentioned. So why is the car park not included in the plans? And what will happen to the parking area? Perhaps it too will come before you in future in an attempt to build more and more into this already tight area. If it is indeed being split into two, then this is a hugely missed opportunity to have a sustainable urban development next to Gillingham Town Centre, which we've already heard is at the forefront of this new range of development and regeneration for our high streets. As I'm sure you're aware, this is a narrow Victorian road of terrace houses, so space is at a premium. I appreciate we have a housing shortage, however, we're not going to solve Medway's housing crisis by packing in 18 flats into this development with potentially 36 people, possibly with cars, in an already congested urban area. Surely it's better for all to have less number of flats with suitable provision for a decent standard of living that does not impact the existing residents. Nor can I hand on heart accept the transport statement included in the application, which showed 102 parking spaces available within a 2-minute walk of this property. I have been out several times, as have my fellow ward colleagues at different times, and have not been able to identify the 102 spaces. The fact that the report lists the doctors on call spaces amongst the 102, and therefore presumably available to park in, which we know people are not allowed to park in those, tells you all you need to know. I also note the absence of any provision for potential residents who may have a disability and require disabled parking. The original plot did contain 2 disabled bays, so without including the car parking, there's no provision for disabled people. There are ground floor facts shown on the plan, so this is perhaps another missed opportunity. I note the mention of the property's proximity to transport links, such as the railway station and a bus stop. However, the buses do not run late into the evening, and although I'm pleased to see a cycle storage on the plans, I expect people who work a wide range of different hours may not be able to rely on them, and would in fact use a car, particularly during winter and shorter days. The transport statement also suggests there should be provision of 1.06 car spaces per unit, as they are all 1 bedroom. There should be a provision for 19 spaces, which are simply not available in this area. I don't accept that because Gillingham is an urban area that we should expect residents to be crammed in and have more and more congestion.
1 minute left. 1 minute left.
Okay. When will it stop? There have been other projects in the Medway area that have conditions on parking that are more defined in their wording, not just using words in the conditions like discouraged from driving and encouraged to use public transport and active travel. More clearly defined wording on the condition could clearly state the residents are prevented from applying for residential parking permits to prevent pressure on parking spaces. Although your papers will show this as a preference, the conditions are not clear enough and do not relate to the whole development. In summary, I am against this proposed resubmission of the planning application without some firmly defined conditions for refuse store and parking restrictions for all of the flats in the development due to overdevelopment in a cramped urban setting with limited amenity space and without regard to those with disabilities. And I'm disappointed the original plot, which had a car park that is still there, has not been included to make this a sustainable urban development, and I do worry about what comes next. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I gave you a few seconds over the top because you got interrupted, you could say, in full flow. Just picking up some of the comments you made, yeah, can you, Eric, make comment upon the study about car parking spaces on the road? And the other thing is that why is the red line excluding the existing car park?
Thank you. First of all, I just wanted to confirm that the reason why the original ones were withdrawn because it was the wrong form of application, because the ones that I explained where they don't need external changes, they are prior approval, but originally they included ones that required external changes, so they had used the wrong procedure basically. I don't know if George wants to talk about parking.
Sorry, what was the question specifically?
The survey, we're talking about the number of spaces in the road, and the ward councillor was quick.
Yes, the parking survey that was undertaken by the applicant was, the survey itself I think was quite robust, but the way it was presented in their transport statement, I do agree, could be interpreted as misleading. I think that the on-street parking capacity that was available shows that on-street there's sort of 89% occupation, which is relatively high. If you were trying to circle around there, you would take a little time trying to find a parking bay. So it's certainly, it is an area with a high level of on-street parking.
Just a general question. I wondered why the red line excluded that parking area.
Yeah, it's just the way the application came in. We can't make them change. We have to make a decision based on what they've submitted. So it might not be our preferred, or what we'd, it might not be the best solution, but we have to make a decision as the application submitted. And I'm sure they will come in with something else for the car park. But yeah, they made the application like that. We have to make a decision.
Thank you. Councillor Howcroft-Scott.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, officers. I am worried, really, and I think Councillor Prentice has eloquently put, this is really overdevelopment, and I think sometimes in areas like this, overdevelopment creates almost slums, really. People have got living on top of each other, the congestion, the lack of provision for the 21st century. 1 in 3 of us, become disabled in our lifetime. And, and that's through no fault of our own. And we can't walk very far and need parking. But bins are in, good places to store waste, impedes or stops fly tipping, stops vermin, stops the degradation of the area. And I'm really sorry, but I blame the shower opposite for not delivering a local plan, because this is why places, and it's the places that are the most challenged in our Medway that are getting these overdevelopments, and it's just a real worry.
Councillor Hamadeshi.
Thank you very much. I too have the same concerns raised by my colleague Printer. It is worrying, and also what really piques my radar is the parking survey that was done that's dubious, to say the least. We must take into consideration the wishes, feelings and sentiments of local packed committees. These are individuals that dedicate their time to addressing issues within their own community. They know better than anybody else the issues pertaining to that area. So with that being said, I'm fully behind not recommending this to go forward, because it's a land grab essentially, and it's not going to bring about any social cohesion to the area. People are going to be closely packed into close area, and as was mentioned already around the waste bins and all of that, we cannot have that dense population made even more denser. Thank you.
Councillor Angle.
Thank you. I'm also worried with in respect to the provision of waste bins, because we've had an issue in Rainham North whereby there's a building whereby there was no provision for refuse bins, and they just have to put it on the road, and then the residents have to be complaining because they just pick it and dump it on the road, and the other residents will be complaining that bins are being put in front of their homes. So I think provision for waste bins should be something that must be taken into consideration, because it's very necessary. Thank you.
Councillor Calvin.
I have similar views to my colleague on this. I mean, I'd like some reassurance from the officer that there should be proper covered provision for waste bins. Apart from that, I think with the parking issues, the socio-economic issues that have all been mentioned, whilst they all have validity in general terms, but I struggle to see how they can be versed in planning terms that would give sufficient justification for turning this particular application down. The reality is that we have got an extreme shortage of homes provision, not just in Medway, but across the whole country. And whilst we're only talking about small extra numbers here, those small numbers add up over a number of applications. So whilst I've got some sympathy for the arguments that have been voiced, I can't see them in planning terms stacking up sufficiently to be able to recommend a refusal. Thank you.
Yep, Mary?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think that was already noted, but there is a condition suggested about refuse storage and securing the details. And there's also a condition about a travel and parking management plan. I was going to say that maybe the wording of that parking and management plan could be changed slightly to make it explicit that residents would be prevented from applying for residence permits. So that's condition 5. It's just a suggestion that we could alter the wording to make that absolutely certain.
That would be a good idea. Just to point out, of course, this site is very close to the site we had right at the very beginning of this committee, and that equally has no parking spaces apart from 2 for disabled. So it does actually align with our policy of near zero parking for town centre applications, especially when they're next to railway station, bus route, etc. Okay, Councillor Jones.
Thank you very much, Chair. Overdevelopment has been mentioned. Can I get some sort of definitive officer advice on this, either from the senior planner or the chief planning officer, in terms of the number of flats which are now proposed? I mean, were there to be a refusal on the grounds of overdevelopment, would it be a valid one?
Currently, there's permission through the 2 various routes which I explained for 16 flats. So this is just for an additional 2 in the loft. So it's a very sustainable location. I think, like the first application that we discussed tonight, is very close to the centre of Gillingham. So it might be difficult to defend in terms of lack of parking.
Councillor Peake?
Sorry, I've been slow in uptake. Are you in effect saying the horse is already bolted because there's already permission for the other flats? There really isn't an argument to turn down for 2 more?
I think,
yeah,
basically all we're looking, what's on the application tonight is just 2 additional units. Mary?
Yeah, that's right. It's just whether the 2 are going to make the scheme unacceptable. So that's what the decision is. I don't think that the visual impact or the impact on neighbours is unacceptable. So it's just whether you think the intensification for those 2 extra flats makes the difference.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm looking at the photographs. I can see it's a historic building, quite attractive in my view. And condition 9 says that all materials used externally shall match those of the existing building, which I'm happy with. But could we strengthen that condition to say to the applicant that they have to submit a plan of the materials to officers, and then for us to agree it, as has been the case with other applications? Thank you.
Mary?
Yeah, yes, we can. We can alter it so they submit samples of materials rather than, yeah.
I think I saw Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Chairman. On the subject of the waste, just up the road from my shop in Canterbury Street, between Waterloo Road and Nile Road, there's a block of I suppose, half a dozen houses can be converted into flats, so there's two people living, or two groups of people living there, and there's no waste provision for them. And of course, you find, I believe it's a Wednesday, the waste is collected, but by Wednesday evening, there's sort of nappies thrown out, all sorts of things, you know, just open, just on the pavement, and you just sort of feel, well, this is going to be occurring in this development if that there's no proper provision. Thank you.
Councillor Howcroft-Scott, want to come back?
I agree with Councillor opposite, Councillor Barrett. I think this has already been extended before. So, you know, as a property, because it wouldn't have been initially flats, would it? It would have been some kind of lovely house at some stage, wouldn't it, for, I don't know, the squire or whatever. But I have to say that, you know, it looks lovely, doesn't it? To have something coming out of the roof is an eyesore. But, you know, we do need to make sure that the bins have been provided for and that parking has. And, you know, that actually, you know, that it isn't an overdevelopment, because I know we've passed the flats around the corner, but they are just around the corner. You know, the block of flats, which is the old snooker stroke bingo hall, is one side of Councillor Barrett's carpet shop, and these are the other side. So, you know, it is really overdevelopment, in my opinion.
Councillor Peake, will you come back?
Slightly embarrassed because I think I should know this already. If we were going to vote against this, we do actually need to offer a reason that is good practice. We can't, you know, we've got to have something substantial that we can say. Is that correct?
Councillor Peake, the normal practice is that I'll go to the Vice Chair to move the proposal as laid out. And then we'll see what happens. Councillor Maritime.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, further to what other people's comments have made, I know it's got to, we've got to, you know, if you were going to go yay or nay, it has to be on planning terms alone. Certainly, it's quite interesting. They've obviously kind of thought that they could get 18 out of this, because if you look at the photographs and you see the aerial view, you can actually count the parking spaces, that some of which I suspect they've actually spray painted in themselves, and there are actually 18 parking spaces already. So I think if I were to support this, and at the moment I'm not inclined to do so, I think it needs to be on the basis of that no parking permits can be applied for, and the car park as is there now is where people should be parking their cars. But my kind of view, I suspect, is that they're hoping that at some point they can actually whack some more buildings on their car park.
So just to remind people that the application site is the red line, so it excludes the car parking, those 18 spaces you mentioned. Any other member? If not, I'm going to go to the Vice Chair. Sorry.
Yeah, there were two conditions that it's been suggested were altered. So the easy one is condition 9, which was the materials to match existing. Instead, we could ask for samples of materials so that we can approve them. That's fine. And then the other suggestion is that condition 5, which is about the travel and parking management plan, be sort of the wording altered to make it explicit that residents will be prevented from applying for residence permits. So alter the wording to make it more explicit. Well, it's for the application. That's all we can do. Yeah. Yeah. It does, but I think that it would be quite likely that they would want to provide a joint facility for the whole development.
Okay, I'm going to go to the Vice Chair. I'm sure she's noted the 2 amendments to the conditions.
Thank you, Chair. I move the recommendation to approve the application subject to conditions 1 to 9 as laid out in the main papers, and the amendment of condition 5 with regards to parking and condition 9 with regards to materials. Thank you.
Second exactly that, Chair.
Okay, those in favour of the proposal?
That's 11, Chair.
Those against the proposal? 4, 5.
That's 4, Chair.
Thank you, members. Thank you for Ward Member for coming along. So the proposal for Pear Tree House, 68 West Street, Gillingham, has been approved. So I'm going to move on to item 9, and Tom is going to speak to this.
Thank you, Chairman. This is a retrospective planning application for the permission of the conversion of a C3 dwelling to a C2 care home for children at 128 Gordon Road, Strood. This is the application site, which is was previously a terrace property of 4 bedrooms. It appears a 2-storey from Gordon Road, but due to the land levels, there is a lower ground floor which accesses into the rear garden, so it would appear 3 from the rear. As you'll see from the slides, following after this, this is the site again in an aerial view. And here again the terrace. This is the terrace property and the surroundings panoramic stream. And you can see from the plans here that there's no proposed alterations externally or internally, apart from this bedroom here. Will be an office now. Sorry, apologies. And then there'll be a bedroom on the ground floor, 2 further bedrooms on the first floor, and then all the amenity area in the lower ground floor and access onto the rear gardens. So the application is supported by a design and access statement, which indicated that there will be 2 children cared for at the property, and they would have 2 members of staff in the evening, and then there'd be 24-hour care. So during the day, there will be possibly up to 3 members of staff, depending on the children's needs of that within the care home. They've also confirmed separately that the 3rd bedroom will be used as additional living space and not a bedroom. The proposed is considered acceptable in principle, the loss of the family dwelling being justified for providing another needed use for the Medway Council need. The concerns are raised by neighbours regarding amenity and parking. Regards to amenity, it's not considered the number of children and the potential staff required that would cause any more activity than a single family dwelling of its size, or in addition to any possible conversion under permitted development rights, which would include a C3B or a C4 small HMO, which could result into 3 to 6 unrelated adults living in the property. It is noted that there is a 3rd bedroom, so to prevent the use of the property to intensify to 3, we've considered it respectable to put a condition to limit the use to 2. With regard to highways, again, similarly, it's considered that the increase in occupancy from a C3 to C2 would not result in a generation of visitors that would affect adversely affect the impact of the local network. Therefore, it's considered the application is recommended for approval subject to the conditions.
Thank you. This is in my ward. I've had no representations directly. I suspect that's the same for Councillor Field as well. And Councillor Howcroft-Scott.
Thank you, Chair. And can you hear me? Yeah, thank you for the paperwork. It's with a heavy heart that I just worry about this. Obviously, I live in that ward. Parking is a major issue in that ward. But for me, as chair of the young children, the Children and Young People's Committee, we do need these provisions, but we do need these provisions for Medway children. You know, we've got some of our children in care living as far as Scotland and Nottinghamshire and places like that. And obviously, you know, it's traumatic enough being in care, but it's also, you know, terrible when they're miles away from the environment they know, the friends they may have, and things like that. But I always worry about this, and the worst of these do hit the headlines. I mean, you know, does the planning committee know that 4 out of 5 children's homes in England, and these are small children's homes, which these mainly are run for profit? So it's, you know, as corporate parents, we are probably going to have someone else's vulnerable children here, and actually they're going to be needing our mental health resources, our medical resources, our school resources, our SNED resources. And I don't know if it's possible from a planning aspect to say, okay, if we pass this, but can not 50% of them be Medway children at least?
Yeah, Peter, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. As members will know from, I think, the training last week, there are certain elements within this sphere of consideration that are planning and some which aren't. And where in this case children, but where those in need of care, whether they're children or adults, where they originate from, is not a matter that can be given any weight as part of the planning considerations. So in answer to the question, sort of explicitly, no, we can't put a condition on which directs it to Medway children, unfortunately. Thank you.
No, thank you. Yeah, I find it rather disappointing that we have on one side Medway Cares for Children, and then at planning committees we're struggling to put in provisions to ensure that Medway children are cared for within the housing stock that we have. It's just like counterintuitive. It doesn't make much sense to me at all. I share Councillor Howcroft's view around children in care, and as a mental health nurse for over 20 years, I want to tell you all that we have a duty of care. Institutionalization, we all understand it from a point of view of a hospital. We know when you go, be admitted to a hospital, every day you spend in a hospital, you're being institutionalized. But we have a cottage industry of children being cared for in homes. You're creating institutionalization that you cannot even measure. For profit, where young people are going to be put on enhanced observations just for profit, because if one person needs 2 people, where's the recovery? Where's the plan for the young person to end up having 1 carer? That person's going to be on 2-to-1, 3-to-1 forever. And we need to be very conscious of the damage that we are doing within this forum, within this house, by allowing these applications to go through. I find it very hard because there's no alternative. The provisions for care homes are not really there in terms of hospital inpatient facilities. So I find it very, very troubling, and it's important for us to be able to expel and share those worries and concerns to everybody here, that we need to be thinking more on a practical, future-gazing level than we currently have. It's not just a planning situation, that the building is correct, the walls are correct, but the care that's being provided there is not going to be correct. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Etheridge.
Thank you, Chairman. And as this committee is fully aware, we've discussed this so many times about children's homes in Medway, not necessarily catering for the children of Medway. And that's why I've asked in the past, and I ask once again, when it's described in the principle of the application that this is a need for Medway, it's not. It's a need for someone, not necessarily from Medway. unless we get into a situation where we can guarantee and start performing within the principle that this is going to be for a child or a young adult in Medway, can we please, please, please not put it in the principle, because it's not true? Thank you.
Councillor Field.
Thank you, Chair. As you noticed, this is the ward that I represent, and as you said earlier, I haven't received any particular representations on this plan application. I think the point actually that seems to be missing in this appraisal is that previously, when we seemed to have seen similar types, the head of Children's Services Commissioning has had an opportunity to comment, and I haven't seen that in this report.
Mr. Tom?
Yes, they were consulted, but they hadn't responded on this case.
I'm disappointed with that. Can you just, Dave, have an opportunity to have a word to make sure that in the future? Yeah.
Chairman, I'll happily do that. I think, to be fair to Mr. Harman, I think it's James Harman, I think he was assuming that the training that he and Children's Services did with Pete would cover the difference between planning and other controls. But I will pass those comments on, Chairman.
Peter, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to add to that, yeah, Mr. Harman is looking at changing the way they respond on these types of applications, which I think did come out as part of the training. And it's that balance of ensuring that the information they provide us is helpful in the planning arena rather than just under their own regulations. So it's looking at that resource issue, but they are looking to respond on those planning matters. Thank you.
Councillor Jones.
Chair, just briefly, as time's getting on, can I ask if this application were to be approved, you'll be reading out your normal Ofsted statement after the decision has been made?
Yes, I mentioned that in my preamble. Okay, let's move. We're going to move to the Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I move the recommendation to approve the application subject to conditions 1 and 2 as laid out in the main agenda. Thank you.
I second, Chair.
Okay, I'm going to read out my little spiel. This approval is only in planning terms. The Planning Committee has not given permission for the children's care home. That permission is granted by Ofsted working with the Children's Services Department of the local authority whose children will be living there, which may not be Medway Council. And I request on behalf of the committee that the concerns raised by residents and others be made available to Ofsted. Having said that, can we take the vote, please? Those in favour of the proposal?
That's 14, Chair.
And those against?
That's 1.
Okay, you jumped the gun there. So the application for 128 Gordon Road, Strood, has been approved. We move on to 10, and Peter is going to speak to 20 Milburn Road, Gillingham.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. You'll see from the site plan up on the screen that this relates to 20 Milburn Road in Gillingham. It's a sorry, get the mouse to work. There we go. It's a mid-terrace property within the road. The application seeks planning permission for single-storey extension to the rear, single-storey extension to the side, side and rear dormer, and change of use of the property to a 7-person house of multiple occupation. You can see here from the photographs the character of the area. This is the existing elevations of the property, and there's the proposed, and you can see there the L-shaped dormer window. Members will see, and this is a critical part of the consideration, that within the planning history there's already a lawful development certificate that's been granted for the same extensions and dormer window and the change of use of the property to a 6-person HMO. So that's a lawful development that can be undertaken at any time. So the difference between what is lawful and what is before members tonight is essentially the addition of one person within the property, and it's this ground floor room here, which will be a bedroom, whereas it was previously a reception room of some description. So in the context of that fallback position, that the extensions are lawful and the occupation of the dwelling or of the property for up to 6 people is lawful. The addition of one added person to the property, to my mind, would mean that the impact of that would be minor in planning terms. The communal space remains adequate on the ground floor for the occupants in terms of the relevant standards, even with the addition of the extra person within the house, and therefore planning permission is recommended. Thank you.
This application is very similar to the one that was in my ward 2 meetings ago, I think, in Western Road, where you've got permitted development for 6, and all we're looking to do is 1 additional room. Any member? Councillor Howcroft-Scott.
Yeah, because that was passed, I don't think we've got anywhere to go. But I would like to say, even in prisons and young offenders institutions, you have communal space. And the fact that this is being taken away, mainly housing students, which in my opinion are usually under 25s, these are young people, and, you know, suicide rates are going up, mental health and well-being is impact. We are a human race. We are social beings, and taking away space so that a developer or a landlord can make extra bucks, in my opinion, is an utter disgrace.
Thank you. Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Chairman. On the subject of parking, which most of my comments have been, now you've got sort of 6 people, adults, that they all might have a car each, but whereas in an average household family, a lot of the children would be old enough to drive. So would all these 6 people be eligible for parking permits?
So in terms of the permitted or the lawful development, that would have no restriction that we could impose on it. So those six adults could all apply within the regulations set by our parking standards or parking services team. So it would be a matter essentially again outside of the planning process, because from a planning point of view it's lawful to have 6 people in there. So in this application I would suggest it's unreasonable to attach additional burdens and additional conditions for that one extra person within the property.
Thank you.
Okay. Obviously, this is a reflection of the fact that there's need for housing. So we're getting this type of applications as it's an identical one to the one that was two meetings ago, and I expect there are others in the pipeline. I'm going to move to the Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I move the recommendation to approve the application subject to conditions 1 to 7 in the main agenda. Thank you.
Seconded, Chair.
Those in favour of the proposal?
That's 14, Chair.
Those against?
That's 1, Chair.
The application for 20 Milburn Road, Gillingham, has been approved. I'm going to move to the Civic Centre site, and Mr Harris was going to speak to this.
Chairman, thank you very much. Members are very familiar with the Civic Centre site. You've had discussions recently and presentations regarding a possible future development on that site. And you will also be aware that we've got the Strood Waterfront Development Brief, which was adopted in 2018, and the Strood Town Centre Master Plan, which was adopted in 2019, which all look at this site, the wider site here, for development. But there are some flood risk issues on site, and there is further work that needs to be done in relation to that, whilst also getting the site ready for the future application. As a result of that, we've got this application in, which is simply for the creation of the access and entrance into the site together with associated works. So it's looking for an access coming through here and rising up into the site. And that will enable them to do the further works necessary to get the site ready for a possible development, which members will consider under a separate application at some point in time, probably this year. So this is the Esplanade, so that's looking back towards the old White's Joinery on High Street just there. And this is the work that's already been undertaken so far in relation to flood protection and some land raising. You can see the traffic lights there. That's the entrance that's proposed here. And it will change what this proposal will do, and the future proposal will have this as the main entrance, and then the Esplanade will be secondary, with some bollards potentially going in here. So this will be a secondary entrance, keeping it available for emergency purposes and for the Rochester Bridge Trust to do their works. But the main entrance in the future will come through just here with a new traffic light system. So that's the outside the site, that's the Esplanade just in here. And this is the future application site. And that's where we'll be having the new access just coming in here. So coming out there, so a direct 90-degree access and entrance from the A2. And then this is looking behind, so if we're looking behind here, looking into the site, so the new access road will come in, will be graded up to a high point up here. And then this is an aerial photograph showing well, not an aerial photograph, but a wider show of the site. So you can see the work that's been undertaken already, but there is further work still to be done to get that ready for future development in accordance with the briefs that I've referred to. And then the aerial view showing that entrance just in there. And then we start to get to the plans. So the red line shows the application site, so it just purely relates to that. And you can see the proposed road coming in there with footpaths either side of it. The orange line is an indicative of the future application that members will see. And the blue line was the application which accompanied the flood defence work back in 2017. And then we see the contours. So as I said, it will have to be sloped up from here up to a high point in there in order to potentially facilitate development around it. Now, members, you'll see from the supplementary agenda advice, just for clarity, I'm looking to amend condition 3 of the construction environmental management plan. But just to be absolutely clear, and this reflects comments from our own highways officers team and also from Rochester Bridge Trust, that in terms of construction traffic, we want to see details of temporary signalled operations, details of construction traffic volumes and timescales, no routing at all via Rochester Bridge, construction vehicles to be left out and right in, and a commitment that access to the bridge, its structure and Esplanade will be retained at all times for the Rochester Bridge Trust and the emergency personnel. Now, the applicants have agreed to that, but just for clarity, I wanted to make that specific within condition 3. And subject to that change, Chairman, recommending approval, subject to conditions as laid out. Thank you.
Again, this is in my ward. Any member? Oh, Councillor Galvin.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And it's good to see a proposal coming forward for the site, albeit an enabling thing. I was a bit bemused, I must say, upon reading the agenda to see the Bridge Trust's comments, because the access into the site from the High Street has probably been going as long as the Bridge Trust themselves. So, but in more recent times, I can remember before it became the Civic, when it was Wingate's, all the Wingate's traffic which was heavy goods traffic to a large factory complex making cement mixers. I well remember a little side on my travels many years ago, coming across them on the quayside in Fiji. So it was quite a successful company in its day. All that traffic went off the high street. When it was the site was acquired by the old Rochester upon Medway Council, you well remember, Chair, the members and officers could access those of us who came not from the Strood side, but from the Rochester and the Chatham direction. We all entered the site through that front entrance off the High Street. So I do find it a little bit difficult to see why they're making such a big fuss about it. But I'd urge colleagues to support this wholeheartedly, because it's just one step to what is going to be a fantastic scheme. And I think you'll agree, Chair, a boot shot in the arm for that part of Strood. You know, to get people living on the site eventually will help support the local shops and services in Strood. So I think this is very much a win-win. Thank you, Chair.
The only thing that's changing, of course, is the bridge is getting older. So I'm going to go to the Vice Chair. Oh, sorry, Councillor Field. Didn't see you.
Hi, thank you, Chair. May I also state that it would be good to see the revitalisation of the site, much needed housing. The proposals obviously will come to the committee later, but I'm looking forward to hearing them here. I think my one little concern on this, and maybe it's just me not quite getting the gist of condition 3, but this is essentially the most appropriate controlled pedestrian routing across the bridge through to the town centre. Obviously, Canal Road's a little bit more heavier in terms of its movements, and that has an uncontrolled pedestrian crossing. Here, this is again uncontrolled pedestrian crossing, but it's quite light movement. Obviously, the mix of construction traffic is there. So maybe just a bit of a clarification on condition 3, or whether that can be strengthened to make sure that there's appropriate marshalling and pedestrian facilities coming across here.
Chairman, thank you. Just to reassure Councillor Field, that's exactly what we're trying to achieve, or one of the things that we're trying to achieve through condition 3. So we will be making sure of that. Yeah.
Go to the Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I move the recommendation to approve the application subject to conditions 1 to 8 as laid out in the main agenda and the amendment of condition 3 as set out in the supplementary agenda. Thank you.
I second.
Those in favour of the proposal?
That's 15, Chair.
So the application for the Civic Centre, former Civic Centre, Esplanade has been approved. I'm going to move to item 12, as Harewood, Mats Hill Road. Peter.
Thank you, Chair. This application site relates to an area of land to the north of Mats Hill Road. It's within the open countryside, within the AONB. The area to the rear, which you can see just to the north of the red line, is an area of ancient woodland, which is also protected by a tree preservation order. The planning application that's been submitted is for the provision of one gypsy and traveller pitch, which would include one mobile home and one utility room. You can see from the history, and I think it's quite important to just be clear on this, that there was an enforcement notice that was issued in relation to the site and in relation to the residential use of the site. That went to appeal, and during the appeal, the inspector identified that there was harm caused to the AONB, and that harm was not outweighed by the general unmet need of gypsy and traveller sites within Medway's area. However, critically within that appeal decision, there was no weight given to any personal circumstances of the occupants at that time, and that's one of the areas where the application that's currently before members tonight differs quite considerably from that previous consideration. So, in terms of the photographs of the site, you can see there's the mobile home on the left-hand side. There's an area of grass that's been planted up, again with the roadside hedgerow alongside. This is the existing utility room, day room that's in situ and is currently applied for. And here's elevations of that day room, which your eyes might be better than mine, but I think it's 4.3 metres by 3 metres, so it's relatively modest in scale in terms of the provision of such structures that one would normally expect on a gypsy and traveller site. In terms of the considerations, as I said, the previous notice was served and appealed. That was complied with, and it was subsequent owners that have now put this application in. Members will be aware through previous applications for gypsy and traveller accommodation and through the work that's been undertaken on the local plan that there remains an unmet need for gypsy and traveller sites, and as I say, previously that general unmet need wasn't sufficient to overcome the identified harm. However, in terms of the occupants on the site, there are 3 children which form part of the family that reside on the site. 2 of those children are of primary school age and attend Parkwood Primary School, which is less than a mile from the site. So I think that has quite a considerable bearing on the balancing act of this proposal. And as you'll see from the report and from the deliberations, that it concludes at the end that the combination of the relatively modest proposal in terms of a single mobile home with a modest outbuilding, combined with the general unmet need and the specific personal need of the occupants, is sufficient to outweigh that harm to the AONB and countryside. And permission is recommended for this proposal, with the inclusion of a condition that limits the occupation to the occupants that are currently on the site that have those specific needs. Thank you, Chair.
Any member? Councillor Etheridge.
Thank you, Chairman. First question is, how do we ensure that the condition as specified, that's limited to this applicant, is enforced? And secondly, how do we ensure that additional buildings won't be raised and retrospective applications put forward, such as what we had recently of where they needed a community hub and a site area for them to work and play and meet in? So I think there's further conditions yet to be considered. Thank you.
Peter.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of the condition limiting the occupants, see it's set out on the papers. It's quite clear and is enforceable. In terms of visits to the site, as part of the caravan count, the council undertakes a twice yearly count of caravans on gypsy and traveller sites, and that forms part of the general monitoring of sites, so that could be picked up as part of that monitoring if indeed there was a situation where the condition was breached. In terms of the future applications for further development on the site, members will know that we can't consider what might happen in the future, what someone may wish to apply for, or indeed what an individual may do without planning permission. Those aren't matters for us to consider as part of this application. We're looking at the planning merits of this application. But obviously, in terms of if there were unauthorised development that occurred, then we have the enforcement tools to deal with those breaches if appropriate. Thank you.
Barrett.
Thank you, Chairman. Nothing about parking on this occasion, but I'm rather puzzled. A few weeks ago, we had a similar application down that same road, Mats Hill Road, which the officers recommended a refusal. And now we have this one where they're recommending okay. I just can't understand it. Perhaps, you could enlighten me.
Chairman, yes, I can. The application we recommended refusal to was for a huge outbuilding, which to all intents and purposes looked remarkably like a bungalow, and was much larger than what would normally be considered acceptable for an ancillary building. So we were recommending refusal to that ancillary outbuilding because of its size, being over what was considered necessary and being harmful to the AONB. Peter's explained that this application, which is for a mobile home and the personal circumstances which justify it here, and in this case we've got an outbuilding which is of an appropriate size to meet the needs of the occupiers.
Let's come back. Had you put this offer to the previous development that was refused?
No, the development that was refused related to an outbuilding. We weren't taking action in relation to the mobile home that was on the site. So the mobile home is lawful and can remain there. We were taking action in relation to the outbuilding only. They had permission for an outbuilding of a similar size to the one here, which we were very happy with. It was because they built something which they didn't have consent for.
Excellent. Okay, any other member? Oh, Councillor Galvin.
Thank you, Chair. I think sometimes if one could describe these people as a more settled travelling community, are often unfairly treated by the public generally. And I mean, if you look at the photographs that we've got in the presentation, it's a very neat, well-maintained site. I well remember, and probably Mr. Harris will remember, the fuss we had one on North Dane Way a few years ago. You remember that one? Which was actually very similarly maintained. Whilst, yes, this is an area which we would not normally allow buildings to be constructed, I think that we should really, be slightly generous in these occasions, because it's a family. They're obviously maintaining the property very well. We can see that, and it has to be admitted that to find permanent sites that would bring us up to a level that would be acceptable is extremely difficult. I did have in my portfolio up to the last year travellers, responsibility for travellers, and I did look at various sites in Medway, and it was exceptionally difficult to find a site that was wouldn't have caused a huge great furore. So I think whilst it's a difficult thing to manage, but this site-by-site applications coming in and looking at each one on its particular merits is a good way forward, because they like seeing countryside sites. That's part of their long culture with the Romany families. So I personally, I think we should treat this with sympathy. It's well controlled in that the permission is specific to the one family. So personally, I'm quite happy with this. Thank you, Chair.
I go to the Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I move the recommendation to approve the application subject to conditions 1 to 4 as laid out in the main agenda. Thank you.
Seconded, Chair.
Those in favour of the proposal?
That's 14, Chair.
So the application for Harewood Metz Hill Road has been approved, and can I thank the two members of the public who have been here for an awful long time. Let's move on. Going to move to item 13, and Peter's going to speak to this.
Thank you, Chair. Microphone's had enough of my voice. This application relates to property known as 3 Harlequin Fields. It's located within this area of the Rochester area, the ME1 area. You can see there that there's 5 dwellings within this cul-de-sac that's you can see on the slides there, and this property relates to one of the 4 that are to the rear the road. This is a view of the property itself, front and rear. And these are the other properties within the area, so you can see number 2 and number 4 with number 5 in the background there. The site isn't within any particular designation in terms of conservation area or a landscape importance area, sorry. But you can see from the photographs that whilst not identical, the houses have similar characteristics in terms of their design. So the application for consideration is for the creation of a gable end on both sides with the installation of a rear dormer to the property. You can see from the photographs and from the plans that the change will have an impact on the property and that it would make it look different and indeed different within the area. But that does not necessarily mean that the difference causes harm. And I think that whilst, as I say, one of the characteristics are that they are all similar properties, there's nothing to my mind that would think that we would have to maintain that similarity forevermore in order to protect the characteristics of the area. Some alterations and changes to the property, which, as members clearly know from the evolution of properties over time with different owners, that is generally what happens to residential dwellings. So it's, as I say, it's considered that whilst there is an impact and whilst that does change the characteristics to some extent, that change is not harmful and therefore planning permission is recommended. Thank you.
Councillor Pearce.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I take a different view because all the houses here have got hipped roofs, and I think this will cause harm to the street scene. I think it'll stand out like a sore thumb, to be honest. So I have got some reasons for refusal, which I'd like to put into play, which have been used in other decisions. So I've got here, the design would result in an unacceptable form.
Councillor Pearce, the normal is the fact that we would go to the Vice Chair to move what the recommendation, and if it's not supported, then we come up for reasons for refusal.
Okay, fine. I've got some reasons. Thank you.
Have a member. Councillor Galvin.
Sorry, Chair. It's obviously a family that's expanding. They want a bit of extra space. Yes, the house will be a little bit different from the others, but is it a substantial difference? I don't think so. I mean, it's a lovely location. It's in a beautiful part of our towns. I can well understand an expanding family would want to stay in that area because it's a very desirable area. I think the fact that the building is like, the houses are all slightly different anyway, as far as I can see. So just make this one a little bit different, as it will have gable ends instead of hipped roofs. So I personally, I can't see a problem.
It is an unusual development because the garages, which are kind of in between all the properties, are actually on 2 levels. So I'm going to move to the Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I move the recommendation to approve the application subject to conditions 1 to 5 as laid out in the main agenda. Thank you.
Chair, I second.
Those in favour of the proposal?
That's 13, Chair.
Those against?
That's 2.
Thank you. The proposal for free Harlequin fields has been approved, and that's the end of the planning applications. So we're going to move on to the performance report, and Mr. Harris will speak.
Chairman, thank you very much. Just before I get to the performance report, I've listened very carefully to a lot of things that members have said, and some frustration from some members there in terms of planning generally and what that means. Members all know that I have frustration regarding the permitted development rights and prior approvals, and the fact that that takes certain things out of the control of councils and local planning authorities. And I think, to quote Councillor Howcroft-Scott, could result in some slums being created without any planning control. And I 100% agree with you, Councillor Howcroft-Scott. I 100% understand we're in a housing crisis, and there is a need for more homes. We walk around all our urban areas and we see the amount of homelessness. We can see the need for temporary accommodation. We see all that, and I absolutely understand we absolutely need to deal with that. And the houses and multiple occupations, we've got to provide more of those to meet our needs. But I am concerned about the ever-increasing use of expanding use of permitted development rights. And the reason why I'm saying that prior to coming into the performance report is we've just literally today received 2 consultations from the government, which Mr. Gove referred to on Sunday, I believe. One is about giving additional priority or support for brownfield land development first. 100% agree with that. But then he goes on to talk about densification, and that being, and the fact that development being on brownfield land should allow for a greater densification. And I really struggle myself with that a little bit, because it should be about, is it appropriate for the site? Does it fit in with the character of the area? So we've got to formulate a response to that. And then there is a further consultation on additional permitted development rights, particularly for households. And we saw in one of the presentations tonight certain development which was undertaken but under permitted development, which had lots of extensions and extensions in the roof as well. And I'm struggling to consider that to be good design, and that was lawful. And the permitted and the consultation that's just out will extend those permitted development rights upwards, outwards, always. And again, I'm really struggling in terms of Mr. Gove's talking about beauty, and then the extended permitted development rights without control by local planning authorities. I think where I'm coming from here is that officers will carefully consider our responses to these consultations. We will make sure that they go via our portfolio holder before we send them off. But I'm just reflecting on some of the comments I've heard around here tonight and sharing a lot of them. Anyway, performance report. I'll get off my high horse, apologies. Performance report. Just one other thing. The MPPF changed in December 2023. Talking to the chairman about that, we feel that there is a need for me to do a presentation on the MPPF, just to help you understand that a little bit further. So probably you're talking about post-date for beginning of April, aren't you, Chairman? Yeah, so we'll organise that. Right, I mean, you'll see in the report that there have been a lot of changes already, and there are proposed changes following Mr. Gove's statement in December. He will introduce local planning authority performance dashboard this year with a focus on speed and quality of decision. Not got a problem with that. He does want to strip back the use of planning extensions agreements and not for them to be used for householders. Again, I don't particularly disagree with that. I think some authorities misuse planning extension agreements. And then he's taken away the loss, the free go. And I 100% agree with that. I think a lot of applicants were bunging in unacceptable applications, getting a refusal, then looking at the officer's report and saying, right, okay, if we amend it, we'll put in a new application. So it's doubling our workload. What the removal of the free go means is that it encouraged applicants and developers to have proper pre-application discussion with my team and with yourselves, and I commend that. The other thing I would say is that despite something Mr. Gove said in terms of naming and shaming us last year, one of the things he didn't say and didn't mention about Medway is that we are one of only 9% of councils that process in excess of 70% of applications in 8 weeks without an extension of time. So as well as knocking us for not having a local plan, he should have praised us for that. Anyway, here we go on to this. Application numbers. You'll see that in 2021, over the year, 1,520 applications in the year. 21-22, 1,586 applications in the year. But 2022-23, we've saw a downturn there to 1,230. And we're going to see a further downturn this year. And I'll come on to the implications of that later. And that's really reflecting the economic climate. So this is good news. 100% of majors in time. And that's with extension of time and without an extension of time. And then in relation to minor applications, 95% in time, although where we've used a planning extension agreement properly, we've got 100% in time on those. And then with other applications, 95% of them have been determined in time. And this is against a target of 80%. I want to just talk about staffing levels here. We had the restructure, and I mentioned the restructure, which is great. And we've managed to fill a number of posts, and we've managed to retain some staff. I'm still carrying a number of vacancies. On 1.4 senior planners less. This is just in development management. 1.4 senior planners less, because I can't recruit to them because they were paid for out of the Housing Infrastructure Fund. I'm short of one planner, one validation officer, one landscape officer, one tree officer, and one derelict and empty properties officer. Some of those I can carry with the current level of work, but the landscape officer, tree officer, and the derelict and empty properties officer, I'll be looking to recruit to them as soon as I can after the 1st of April, because we need them to properly process applications and to deal with some of the enforcement issues that a lot of members are emailing me about at the moment. In addition to that, I don't know what happened to my officers just before Christmas, but I've got 2 off with broken limbs at the moment. One had an accident, a horse accident, and the other one had a skiing accident. So I'm thinking of banning certain sports. Then this covers appeals. Not appeals, sorry, planning application fees. And you'll see we're working as hard as we can to keep fees up as much as possible. Then we've got some figures here in terms of how we compare to other local authorities, and we're doing well. We're certainly above the national targets, and we're doing pretty well in comparison to other local authorities. In relation to appeals, they still come in. On designations, 4.15 of your report talks about, and this is where Mr. Gove is talking about quality of decisions. If 10% or more of applications submitted are overturned in appeal, then he will look to be taking action against us. At the moment, we're a long, long way from that. We're at just over 1% of applications allowed on appeal. He does make reference at paragraph, as you'll see in the report, in paragraph 4.14 about committee overturns. I think he's referring to a number of authorities around the country where their planning committees do not pay sufficient attention to officers' reports and also local and national policy. That doesn't apply to us here. Yes, you do overturn our recommendations, and for the most part, you have really good reasons when you do that. They are the very balanced applications. In relation to appeals, we've had 9 appeals over the quarter. 3 were allowed, of which only 1 was an overturn, and I'll come on to that later. And then we got my favourite subject of prior approvals. Then we go on to number of units under construction. This is good news in terms of Medway. The number of units here under construction and dealing with that housing crisis that I was talking about earlier. And then we have the number of units completed, which is what we're judged on. And you will see that 2019, 20, 2021, 21, 22, we've had some good years there in terms of completion. Just dropped slightly this year, still good, but just dropped slightly. Now, what does this mean? Housing delivery test. We are judged against our housing need, and that's there in the middle section there in terms of our delivery. And if we don't achieve 90% of our need, we've got to do an action plan. If we don't achieve 85%, we have a 20% buffer added. Don't understand it. If you can't achieve your need, how can you achieve 20% addition to that? I really don't understand the logic of that. But then if we don't achieve 75%, then the presumption in favour of sustainable development applies. Now, the last housing delivery test, we managed to get up to 79%, so we were over that. And that was the first time since the housing delivery test has been in place that we've got over the 75%. And that's been done by a lot of hard work by officers, by members, and in terms of working with the development industry. My frustration here in terms of this is we as a council don't build many houses. We as a council do not submit many applications. Developers build and developers submit applications. We just determine them. And we do, I nearly swore then, we do a really good job on that. Now, we work very well with developers. We encourage applications to come in if they're ones that we want to encourage. We don't encourage the ones which we think we would refuse. Having said that, even with the ones that we're encouraging, we still find obstacles put in our way to approving those. National Highways have effectively put in holding objections to major applications anywhere in Medway at the moment. That's really penalising us in terms of our delivery. And I say penalising us because they put the holding objections in. We can't determine them favourably. Developers get applications, get refused, take them to appeal, and then we're penalised because we're not meeting our housing need, and we're penalised under the housing delivery test as well. Pre-application, so important for us there to get that quality that you've talked about tonight. Communication and engagement. What developers want is planning authorities that will talk to them, that will give an opinion, will give a view. And this committee is very good, both at this in committee and at presentations, and giving a view. My officers are also good in terms of that engagement. And it's about being open and honest. If you don't think something's acceptable, tell them. It's better to let them know that than for them not to hear. Member presentations. Developers love them because they hear your views and opinions. Planning performance agreements, so important in terms of that openness, that discussion, and that engagement through the lifetime of an application. And then we have our major developers forum, we have our local agents forum, and we were the authority that set up the North Kent SME forum. We set that up. So well done, members. And that just looks at the completions, and you'll see how well we've been doing in recent years. Enforcement notices. Over the quarter, we've served 3 planning contravention notices, 1 breach of condition notice, and 2 enforcement notices. So Pete's come in, and he's working very closely with the enforcement team to get those notices up and get action taken. Although I do know from the emails that I'm sent by members, you still want more action taken, and we're working on that. You'll see that there's a lot of existing cases that we've got hanging around. Pete, myself and the team are looking to close the ones that we can so that we can focus on the ones that are really causing harm. You will see, though, in terms of the quarter, that there was no Section 215 building action, i.e. on derelict buildings. Reason for that is I haven't got an officer at the moment. So bear with me, members. I will be trying from the 1st of April to get an officer in, and then we can start the action on that again. TPO applications, I've got, you'll see a real improvement over the last 6 months or so. That's since I've been using a consultant to assist Mike in processing these. And I've got, hopefully I'll get authority to advertise for the vacant tree officer post come 1st of April, which will enable me to get an officer in to support Mike and also reduce the costs of using a consultant. Lead Local Flood Authority, you all know Gabby, she does incredible work, and with all the floods that we've had recently, I know that some of you have engaged with her, and she is absolutely brilliant and very, very good with members of the public who are suffering, some of them from flooding issues at the moment. And then in terms of complaints, we had 24 complaints in the quarter. 7 of those went to stage 2, so that meant the majority we were able to deal with at stage 1. But of those 24, 16 were dismissed. You know, there was people were just unhappy with the decision, and we just explained that to them, and they accepted that. But you'll see in the report, 3 of them were partially upheld, and 5 of them were upheld. So if you look at page 153 of your report, it sets out those ones which were upheld or partially upheld and the reasons for that. One of the things that I do like to read out to you, though, is compliments, because it's very, very easy for people to complain and not so easy to compliment. And if you look at the bottom of page 153, you will see some amazing compliments about my staff. We were lucky to meet you, as you obviously have excellent detailed knowledge of the area and preceding plans. Great work, validation team. And then comparing us so much better than London authorities. Thank you for the local plan consultation. I know planning departments are under pressure, so thank you for the clear communication. I'm grateful to your consistent support and professional guidance. You're amazing, thank you. What a true pleasure it has been working with you over the last year. You have been beyond helpful. I wanted to express my gratitude to your staff, to your swift response. Thanks for your help and support on the scheme. It's not common to receive compliments like that, and that just shows the quality of the staff that we have here under mine and Pete's control. So, Chairman, that's the performance report.
Councillor Howcroft-Scott.
Can I just say, you know, you're understaffed, you're always approachable, and everything that you produce, your team, is really easy to read. And I do feel a kind of novice, because I've not been on planning for very long. I was on it, then withdrawn, and I've come back. And, you know, I think these comments really do reflect what you're doing. I think Michael Gove is best ignored. He's regenerating and rehashing stuff that's decades old, and, you know, he's an old timer and he'll be gone very shortly. And I have my admiration for you, and how you did the local plan was astonishing, to see so many people from our communities. I mean, I went to 5 or 6, but, you know, they were just delighted to be consulted and that we were actually getting on with the job. So I salute you and thank you all.
Councillor Jones.
Thank you very much, Chair. I did have a few questions written down, but members, colleagues will be relieved to hear that Mr. Harris has answered most of those in the presentation, so I needn't take up too much of the committee's time. But I do note and value the Chief Planning Officer's professional advice, particularly in relation to the levelling up department's proposals, and note the involvement of the portfolio holder in the reply to the levelling up department is to be included. And I also note his comments about the loss of the HIF-funded posts, and we know the reason for that. I think the compliments demonstrate, I'm glad he read them out, Mr. Harris, because I think the compliments demonstrate just how well the planning department is generally doing. Can I just clarify that I've read the report correctly and that the general picture is that we're meeting or exceeding our targets, and that would include the 90% of cases which have to be determined by delegation to officers? I just wanted some clarity on that because I didn't see that in the report. I may have missed it. Generally, the picture is one of the Chief Planning Officer and his colleagues, as Councillor Halcroft-Scott has said, doing a very good job, and I'm relieved to hear that the performance is better than Mr. Harris's performance on the golf course.
Excellent. You asked the question.
Yeah, the question in terms of whether it's 90% delegated to officers. You've caught me out there a little bit, Mr. Councillor Jones, because as you say, that's not in the report. Last time I checked, it was around about 90%, but as you know, what we want to do is to make sure this committee focuses on those significant or controversial applications, which is why we're revising this scheme of delegation in consultation with all of you.
Thank you.
Councillor Galvin.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to endorse the compliments that previous members have spoken. I'd like to bring you back to right to the beginning, Mr. Harris, when you mentioned PDR. I would certainly support a very robust response for that, because we've got numerous examples here in Medway where PDR has been used, and it's let some very unsuitable accommodation. I mean, those flats, if you can call them flats, the New Road, Luton Arches end of New Road, where people are actually living in a basement with just a grill at road level to light the lower properties. That is just appalling accommodation, you know, with all the heavy traffic thundering there 24/7. I think PDR leaves a lot to be desired, and yes, I would wholeheartedly endorse a very robust response. I think our record on that is very good, because when the refurbishment of Mountbatten House was proposed, we were told at the time that we were fully entitled to do that under PDR. And I'm pleased to say that myself, as a director of the MDC, and Councillor Doe, were horrified at the thought of doing that under PDR, because we thought that would be riding a coach and horses through any right to object to it. So it just proves the point. You can do a thing without PDR and have the 25% affordable, which is going to be done with Mountbatten House. So whilst I might belong to the same party as Mr. Gove, I do not necessarily agree with him at all.
Councillor Pearce.
Thank you, Chairman. Just quickly, I think it was mentioned previously about number of houses permitted and number of houses in the pipeline, if we could see that on a more regular basis. And yeah, National Highways are submitting a lot of holding objections at the moment, of course, with valid reasons. And Active Travel England are not just putting holding objections in, they're actually objecting to applications as well. But I'm interested in knowing how is this affecting extensions at times and determination times? And are those developers generally agreeing and waiting for those areas to be satisfied? Thank you.
Chairman, excellent questions from Councillor Pearce. And you're right, Councillor Pearce, in terms of the objections from Active Travel England and National Highways are genuine and for good reason. I think my concern is, well, we're having those objections, and yet we're being penalised for non-delivery. And I think that point needs to be recognised by those looking at the figures. The good news, though, is in terms of how are developers reacting to them. At the moment, they may get frustrated with me and pull their hair out and so on, but they are agreeing to the extensions of time. So they recognise the difficulty we're in at this moment in time. And I just hope it continues, but when we can resolve those issues with National Highways.
Councillor Hamadoshi.
Thank you. I just want to extend another congratulatory comment to Dave Harris and the whole planning team. Thank you very much, doing a great job. It was just in relation to the compliments, and just so that, according to here, you've got internal and external customers who are giving that feedback. I would like to have a bit more, be able to distill a bit further into that, like, spread, like how many of them were internal and external, because I think you miss a bit of trick in the sense of you can get more insights into where you're performing exceptionally well and where you still need to add a bit more emphasis when you can just distill down to how is that spread. Thank you.
Councillor Field.
Thank you, Chair. I would echo all my colleagues' congratulations on the compliments and thanks for your report. I just wanted to go back to a query that I put in August, which was around whether we could include the numbers of affordable and social housing units that are in the pipeline being completed.
Chairman, we can do that on an annual basis because that comes out through the annual monitoring report, which we can then include. When that's done, we can include that on annual. So it won't be every quarter, but we'll report that annually. Yeah.
We'll move on to appeals.
I'll be as quick as I can. Be as quick as I can on this, Chairman. 3 appeals. The first one related to a site here at Halling. We refused it on being cramped, lack of soft landscaping, inadequate amenity. The rear gardens we felt were pretty tiny compared to surrounding. We felt that there was a lot of hard standing but very little soft landscape, a little bit here and a little bit there. And we sort of felt that the design wasn't great in terms of how it fitted within the street scene, albeit accepting that it is quite a mixed street scene. So we didn't have that as a reason for refusal. An inspector came back and he said, no, it's okay. There is some landscaping, there's a need for housing, and therefore that overrules the possible small amenity area. I think it comes back to that point about permitted development rights, where I know that we're in a housing crisis. I know we need to have housing, but that doesn't mean to say it should be poor housing. So I take issue with the inspector on that. The second application was a member overturn. This related to Cliff, where Trendport wanted to build homes on this site here. The playing fields are on this site, and they wanted to relocate the playing fields to up here and build on here. So total over these 2 sites of 250 units with the relocated playing fields over here. And this would be amenity land, wildfowl meadow in there. Now the committee recognised why officers had recommended approval to it, which comes down to that 5-year housing land supply, etc., again, which you members know very well. The committee felt that 250 homes here would unacceptably harm the character of Cliff. They felt that there's only one road in and one road out of effectively of Cliff, which is a B2000. It's quite narrow in places. It goes right the way through the middle of Cliff Woods, and it's quite narrow there. And if the number of vehicles would result in harm to the amenity of residents fronting that road. The third reason was that they didn't consider it to be a sustainable development because it would be completely car orientated. The buses are poor, inadequate, members felt here, but also in terms of the B2000, you wouldn't want to cycle or walk down there because you wouldn't feel safe. And therefore, if you don't feel safe, you won't walk or cycle. And therefore, car domination, not sustainable. And then the final reason was the sports facility here is right on the B2000. It's used for formal sports, but also informal sports, people walking their dogs and so on. People feel safe using it because it's right on the main B2000 here. The proposed site up here requires an access along Butway Lane and then at the back of the houses. And whilst the actual sports facilities themselves will be good, members didn't feel that the informal use would be quite as good because it wasn't overlooked like the existing one. And therefore, it didn't represent a similar provision. It was a poorer provision. So members refused it on those grounds. It was appealed. It went to inquiry. Unfortunately, our case fell apart, and on the first day of cross-examination, we were up against King's Counsel. Our witness wasn't able to substantiate the case. The applicants then said that they were going to go for costs against us unless we backed down from the inquiry. Our barrister said, "You've lost the case. You will lose with costs if you don't back down." So very reluctantly, the leader, the chairman, portfolio holder agreed that we should back down, and that was reluctantly.
Just a correction. It was the leader was then Councillor Jarrett, and this was before the election. After the election, but before the formal committee, formal meeting. So there was no portfolio holders, and the leader was Councillor Jarrett.
No, you're quite right. It was after the elections, but so we were in a difficulty. You're quite right, Chairman. Thank you. The Residents' Association carried on arguing the case, and I think the unfortunate thing here with the Residents' Association is when we were fighting appeal out at Pump Lane, the Residents' Association there worked with us on the reasons for refusal. Here, the Residents' Association didn't work with us, didn't follow the advice that I gave them in terms of the strength of their case and working with us on our case. And as a result, their case broke down as well, and the appeal was allowed. It was one of 3 appeals allowed for Trentport. One was in Swale, one was in Tunbridge and Malling, and this one here. We were the only council to escape without costs. Significant costs were awarded against Tunbridge Malling, significant costs were awarded against Swale. And then the final one is an advert on the side of the building here in Watling Street in Gillingham, quite close to the fire station, or the former fire station, or no, the new fire station. We put a condition on regarding the level of luminance, and the inspector said, "Well, why have you done that? You need to justify why you've put a condition on requiring it to be a lesser luminance than the standards." I don't know. Is the answer. I don't know why we put such a condition on. It wasn't justified. We didn't explain why we were doing it. It was advice that we got from internal consultants. But we should have challenged those internal consultants as to why they were asking for a lower level of luminance, and that way we could have fought the appeal better, or even not put the condition on. So I think the inspector was right in this case. As much as I don't like those adverts which move and change, the inspector was right based on current planning legislation on that one. And those appeals, Chairman.
And you can confirm that we will not be using the professional officer who threw us underneath a bus.
The answer, Chairman, is no, I will not be using that person again. The company he works for, we've used before, and Peter Canavan, I'd very happily use him again. The gentleman who represented us at Cliff, although he was up against a very experienced barrister, I won't be using that gentleman again, though.
It feels ages ago now, but there you go. Okay, can I thank you for the two presentations, and can you pass on our thanks to the staff for the hard work they are doing on behalf of us and the council. That is the end of the meeting. Can I thank you all, and I'll see you next time.
Yes, much appreciated.
Thank you.